let's go. Good evening. That was loud. I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the City Council, City of Lakewood, Colorado, on June 11th, 2018, 7 p.m. in council chambers. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Paul.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Vincent.
Here.
Vita.
Here.
Franks.
Here.
Royball. Gutwein.
Here.
Skilling.
Here.
Harrison.
Here.
Abel.
Here.
Labure.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great, thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody for coming out tonight. Also would like to welcome those who may be viewing from home or a later date. I'd encourage you, if you have a cell phone, to please turn it off. And Mayor Pro Tem Royball is not able to be with us tonight. Unfortunately, he has a family emergency, so we want to keep him and his family in our thoughts and prayers. And we would like to welcome Councilor Abel back, and I'd like to turn the floor over to Councilor Abel.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to thank everyone who has contacted my family and me about the passing of my wife. Your thoughts and prayers and messages of condolence have been very important to us, and thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We're glad to have you back and certainly here for you. All right, if you'd please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silent prayer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. All right. Will the clerk please read item 4?
Item 4, presentation, Sustainable Neighborhoods Program, recognition of newly certified neighborhoods.
All right. Well, this is a lot of fun. This is the good stuff, and we actually just had a reception across the way to celebrate our sustainable neighborhoods and their sustainable programs. So we are going to highlight some of that and see all the good stuff that's going on. And I'll turn it over to our sustainability planner, Alyssa Vogan.
All right, thank you, Mayor Paul. And I just want to say thank you to all the council members that attended the reception, and thank you for allowing me to be here tonight to talk a bit about the Sustainable Neighborhoods Program and the accomplishments of our residents over the last year in the program. So I've had the opportunity, sorry about that. All right, so I've had the opportunity to speak with several of you about the program and about the accomplishments of the neighborhoods over the last year. But for some of you, this is going to be the first opportunity that I've been given to share some of the highlights of our amazing residents and the work that they've been doing. I'm going to be sharing some of the innovative projects that have happened in the sustainable neighborhoods this last year. And I'm going to talk about projects that range from improving water quality by cleaning local waterways to holding a paint recycling day in the neighborhoods. But the biggest takeaway I'd like you to get from this presentation is how the hard work and dedication of these residents has made such a huge impact, not only on their communities, but also on Lakewood as a whole, and how this work is really changing Lakewood. So tonight is about celebrating these neighborhoods' accomplishments and sharing their stories, many of which have helped us as a city and as a sustainability division continue to achieve our sustainability goals. So I just want to start off by talking a little bit about the Sustainable Neighborhoods Program. I know a lot of you have heard this, but for some of you it might be the first time. So it was established in 2012 to encourage direct citizen action and to provide support to communities who are interested in implementing different sustainability projects within their neighborhoods. And we began with 2 neighborhoods back in 2012, and we've since expanded to 8 sustainable neighborhoods. And I do thank you for standing up here with me, Mayor Paul. I promise that we'll get to why you're up here in a moment. So just a little bit about how the program works. Neighborhoods do have to apply to be a part of the Sustainable Neighborhoods Program. And once they're accepted, they do things like hold workshops, hold events such as the paint recycling event, and complete projects that advance sustainability in their neighborhoods. As they complete this work, they earn credits in the program, and once enough credits are achieved, they certify as an outstanding sustainable neighborhood. So that is why we're here tonight, to recognize the neighborhoods that have certified as outstanding. And this is done on a yearly basis, so neighborhoods have to certify the first time, and then they also have to recertify on a yearly basis. And so our certification year does go from June 1st to May 31st, so we just wrapped up the 2017-2018 certification year. So when completing their projects in these workshops, we do ask the residents keep in mind the program's 5 goal areas, which are energy, air, water, land, and people. And these goal areas do allow for very diverse projects in the neighborhoods, and they all help to advance Lakewood's overall sustainability goals. There are a lot of benefits to participating in the program. Program participation enhances the environmental and social strength of the neighborhood while also demonstrating the residents' commitment to sustainability in Lakewood. One of the most important things, I think, is that the projects are all resident driven and they're all customized specifically to the neighborhood's needs. So we have neighborhoods that range from a 72 unit condominium complex to ones that are home to over 8,000 Lakewood residents. And so I think that's one of the really important things about this program, is that, you know, they're doing what they need specifically for their neighborhood. And then another great benefit is that it promotes leadership development in the residents. And one great example of this is Councilwoman Gutwein, who helped to form Sustainable Southern Gables Group back in, I think, 2013 or 14, something like that. And then another really exciting benefit that our newly certified neighborhoods are actually deciding on right now is where they're going to put their customized signage within their neighborhood. So we do provide them with signs that they get to place in the neighborhood once they certify as outstanding. And after they receive this sign, then every year that they recertify, they get to add the year onto the outside of the sign. And Jonathan had mentioned at the reception that Iber and Belmar are they're halfway around that sign now, so we're not sure what we're going to do once they get all the way around it, but that's a good problem to have. So just a little bit about the program. This is a map of the sustainable neighborhoods in Lakewood. As I mentioned, we have 8 neighborhoods, and at the reception, we had the opportunity to hear some of the stories of these residents, which is really what drives it home for me how impactful this program really is listening to them talk about how it's built community, about how, you know, they actually got to see a project or something that they had in their head come to fruition in their neighborhood. So that's very exciting. And as you can see on the map, we have all size neighborhoods, and they're located in every ward in Lakewood. So that's very exciting. So just a little bit about 2017-2018 overall. It was a very, very productive year for the sustainable neighborhoods. So we will be tonight recognizing 3 newly certified outstanding sustainable neighborhoods, and I'll tell you some different personal initiatives that they completed over the year. We're also recertifying our 5 outstanding sustainable neighborhoods. In just a year, these 8 neighborhoods completed 96 workshops and special events, and they engaged over 2,700 residents in Lakewood, it's huge. And then lastly, their initiatives that were completed through the program helped us to advance 12 of 16 goals that are laid out in the sustainability plan for the city. And that really speaks to how the innovation and hard work of these residents, once again, going back to that, is impacting the Lakewood community as a whole and not just the neighborhoods themselves. And one exciting thing that we did do back in March, this is the first year we held the Sustainable Neighborhood Network Skill Building Retreat. So a few of the council members and Mayor Paul had the opportunity to attend our reception for that. We have since expanded to Denver, who actually has 14 participating sustainable neighborhoods. And so this was an opportunity for residents to learn from one another and network. And they also sat through quite a few sessions on things like marketing, about how to engage diverse audiences, about fundraising, grant writing. And it was just a really exciting day of learning and sharing. And I think we're definitely looking forward to doing more things like this in the future with our partner, Denver. So, all right, so now the fun stuff. So we have 3 newly certified neighborhoods, as I said. These neighborhoods all joined the program back in June of last year. So they're Applewood, Green Mountain, and Morse Park. And as I go over the accomplishments of each of these neighborhoods, I am going to invite the residents to come down and stand up front while I present your accomplishments. And I'm also going to ask the ward members, the ward council members, to join them as well. So I'm going to start with Applewood. So can any residents that are present from Applewood please come down? And you guys get the award for the youngest participating member in the Sustainable Neighborhoods program. So residents in Applewood are passionate about building a strong sense of community in their neighborhood through building partnerships. And they stole my thunder because I talked about this quite a bit at the reception, but they held their neighborhood kickoff event, which kind of launched them into this program at Stober Elementary. And from there, the partnership really has just flourished. So they've worked with the PTA, they've worked with staff, and they've worked with faculty. Just about 1 month ago, they supported their crawfish boil by making it a zero waste event, which was awesome, and you helped them get the word out about sustainability. And the support goes both ways. So Stober offers up their space as a meeting space for workshops and events when they hold them. So that's very exciting. In addition to strengthening this partnership, the neighborhood built a free little library. They held 2 zero waste picnics. They educated one another on topics ranging from rooftop solar to planting for pollinators. And one of the most exciting things to me personally is starting a community garden steering committee to build a community garden at Stober Elementary. So I want to congratulate you all. Give yourselves another round of applause. You earned 134 credits this year, which achieved your outstanding certification in the program. I think you achieved this back in November or December. But at this time, we would like to present you with a mock-up of the sign that's going to be installed in your neighborhood for sometime this summer. All right. Great job, and thank you for your amazing work. And you can keep that sign. That is for you. So. And thank you, Emerson, for staying awake for this. We appreciate it. All right, so next I would like to have residents from Sustainable Green Mountain join me up front. Yes, as well as council members from Ward 4, please. All right, let me tell you about Green Mountain. This is a very ambitious group of people that we have standing in front of us. So when they joined the program, when they applied for the program back in February of 2017, their neighborhood boundary map was a lot smaller than what you see in front of you today. And they slowly continued to push the boundaries and make them as big as they are now, and as I said, it's home to over 8,000 residents in the city of Lakewood now. But I can tell you that their ambition has paid off. They have managed to earn more credits in their first year than we've ever seen in the program for a new neighborhood. And of course, this is not a competition, but other neighborhoods, some friendly rivalry wouldn't hurt. So we really appreciate the effort that you've put towards, and I would like to point out that Jen Kirksey is here, and she is the principal at Dunstan Elementary. And that is where they held their kickoff event. And so I do really appreciate the effort that you've put towards working in schools and helping the students to understand sustainability issues and topics. Some examples of what they've done this year in the schools is volunteering with Hutchinson Elementary's Bike and Walk to School Day. That was, I think, one of the first things that you did with the schools. Assessing lunch habits at Divinity Elementary to see how well students understand recycling. And that was led by Barb, and I think you got some looks from some of the students as you watched them throwing their trash away and telling them where it goes. And following that, they actually taught a class lesson to the students on how to pack a zero waste lunch and educating them on that. So that's huge. And excuse me. So I actually had the opportunity to attend the lessons that they taught at Divinity Elementary. And I definitely left that day seeing the direct impact that you had on those students. Their eyes when they were listening to you and listening to George from Quail Street, they were just so excited to learn about, oh wow, I can pack a healthy lunch and I don't have to throw anything away from it. So this is very exciting. Oh, you're welcome. So in addition to the efforts in the school, Green Mountain residents also collected donations for several organizations. They started biking and walking clubs, they formed a Shrink Our Waste group, and they hosted a very successful seed exchange. So that's just a couple examples of all of the projects that they completed. So these initiatives, plus numerous other efforts, earned Green Mountain 242 credits in their first year as a sustainable neighborhood. So congratulations, Green Mountain, and well done. Great job, thank you. All right, and next up, I'd like to call up residents from Morse Park, please. I know there's a few of you here.
Come on down.
Are they hiding? Did they leave? Oh, no, they're there. They left. All right. So Morse Park is a great example of a neighborhood that came up with a brand new innovative idea that they saw a need for in their neighborhood, and so they brought it to the neighborhood and addressed this issue. And that was through, as I mentioned before, their paint recycling event. And so the residents realized that there was no convenient place in or around Morse Park to recycle their paint properly. And so they decided in one day they were just gonna hold an event, they were gonna market for it and see, maybe some people will show up. And maybe some people will wanna donate money to Lakewood High School's music program, which is who they decided to make who the money went to, and then they also helped them with the paint recycling day, correct? And so in just 4 short hours on a Saturday in the Morse Park parking lot, they managed to raise over $1,000 with this paint recycling event. And to quote what Karen said, I think 8 tons of paint was recycled that day, so it's amazing. And there were actually community members lining up in their cars about an hour before the event actually began. And these were not residents that were just from Morse Park. These were residents from all of Lakewood that were coming. So that really speaks to how this neighborhood identified a need, addressed it, and then automatically did something about it. So that was great. So other successful projects throughout the year included diverting 96% of their waste from their annual picnic from the landfill. a rain garden work day in Morse Park, and a tree planting project that saw 30 new trees planted in the neighborhood. So congratulations. And that was actually another innovative project that we've never seen before in this program. So you managed to engage over 400 residents and earned 143 credits in your first year and an outstanding sustainable neighborhood certification. So congratulations. All right, congratulations once again to all three of our newly certified outstanding sustainable neighborhoods. Oh. All right. I'd next like to talk about our five neighborhoods that are recertifying as outstanding this year. If I could first ask anyone that is in any of these neighborhoods to please stand in the audience so we can recognize you. Right. And I don't have time to cover everything that these neighborhoods did, but I'm just going to touch on some of the really big highlights of the year. So Sustainable Belmar earned 76 credits in this year. They joined the program at its inception, and they've recertified as an outstanding sustainable neighborhood for the 6th year in a row. So similar to other recertifying neighborhoods, they've continued many of their longstanding initiatives as well as come up with some new and innovative projects. So this year they emphasized educating residents on the importance of reducing and recycling. That's kind of what they really focused on. And they offered many solutions in their neighborhood, one of which included providing micro recycling to their residents. So that included this cosmetic recycling. Belmar aimed to work with local businesses because they are the urban center of Lakewood. They realize that this is imperative to sustainability in their neighborhood. And so they do continue to work with the businesses and push that partnership. So congratulations, Belmar. You continue to do great work, and we're so proud of you. And up next we have IBER. So IBER has also been with the program since the beginning and is earning its 6th certification as an outstanding sustainable neighborhood. So this year, Sustainable IBER further expanded their very successful Be Safe initiative, which I think most people have seen the signs around Lakewood, not just IBER. And they expanded it by creating an actual inventory of all the businesses in Lakewood that carry Be Safe products. And then they encourage the residents to go support and shop at those specific businesses. And one new tradition that IBER began this year was the annual IBER garden tour. So 5 residents opened their homes and yards to neighbors so that they could tour them, see what different types of gardens looked like. They had veggie gardens, flower gardens, pollinator-friendly gardens. And tour goers also got the opportunity to go to the IBER Elementary Garden, which was a project started in the Sustainable Neighborhoods program as well. So I'm looking forward to tours that they have planned for this summer, including an urban farm tour. So keep your eye out for that. That should be fun. So congratulations, IBER, and great job. All right, up next we have Sustainable Southern Gables. They're recertifying for the 5th year in a row, and they've continued the tradition of earning more credits than many would ever think possible in the program. You better watch out, Southern Gables. I think Green Mountain is coming for you. So to celebrate their 5th year certifying, they organized a 5-year 5K, which promoted the neighborhood getting active no matter what your age. And then this last year was also the first year of the Green Gables Community Garden. And as you can see from the photo on the bottom, it was a very, very successful year. The garden supplied community members, including students at the elementary school, with healthy, sustainable produce. We're so proud of your work, Southern Gables. Congratulations. All right. And up next, we have Sustainable Lake Lockwood Village. So Lake Lockwood Village is the smallest of the participating neighborhoods, but they are just as mighty and fierce as the rest, I promise you that. The neighborhood is composed of 72 residential condominiums and is recertifying as outstanding for the 4th year in a row. And they did something this year that I was really excited about. It was a very innovative project and really addressed the needs of their specific community. So the residents were noticing that a lot of trash cans in the neighborhoods did not have lids, or they did not have lids that wanted to stay on them, on the trash bins. And it was attracting rodents and critters into the neighborhood, as well as spreading litter across the community. So what did they do? They got together as a team and they worked with their waste hauler to order all new trash bins, as well as ordering recycling bins for every household in the community. So this program not only saw a cleaner community, it saw a rise in the number of residents recycling, which is huge. And it also saw some very disappointed rodents. So, so wonderful job, Lake Lockwood Village. I really enjoy seeing how your projects build community and they work to be inclusive of all. All right, and last but certainly not least, we have Sustainable South of 6th. So the South of 6th neighborhood was all about community building this last year. They made their annual picnic zero waste. They hosted a block party and seed swap, and they formed a vegetarian potluck test kitchen. So they just get together and they work to learn new vegetarian dishes and eat them and maybe enjoy them if they're good. So that's exciting. But another really exciting thing that happened in South of 6th was the first ever all cooped up chicken coop tour. And it might be the first chicken coop tour that's ever taken place in Lakewood, I'm not sure. So residents were encouraged to walk and bike around while getting to see different residents' chicken coops and maybe, how many chickens they have, what's the difference between this type of coop and that type of coop. So it was, and instead of marking the homes with balloons, they actually used empty chicken feed bags. So that further attested their commitment to sustainability. So what a great way to educate residents by giving them an actual firsthand experience. Great job, South of 6th, and we can't wait to see what you come up with next year. All right. So once again, I just want to congratulate all 8 of our outstanding sustainable neighborhoods. You should all be very proud of the work you've accomplished. Your dedication to creating a more sustainable community has resulted in 465 projects and engaged over 12,000 Lakewood residents in just 6 years. So you've successfully engaged youth, businesses, organizations across Lakewood in sustainability efforts, and you're proof that small actions add up to making a big change. So congratulations. One more hand clap, I promise. All right. And just really quick, if anyone is interested in learning more about the program, you can visit sustainableneighborhoodnetwork.org. And I'd encourage you to explore the website, and each of the 8 neighborhoods does have their own webpage, so you can see upcoming events as well as current initiatives that they're working on. So thank you for your commitment to making a better Lakewood. And just as a reminder, Jonathan and Lynn from the Sustainability Division will be here on July 16th to present about our annual report on the sustainability plan. So we hope to see everyone there, and for more information, visit lakewood.org/sustainability. So thank you, Mayor Paul, and thank you, council members.
I have a note to bring everybody down for a picture of everybody.
We were trying to decide if there's too many people.
Okay.
Do you
all
want
right.
to, if you want to do it, we just wanted to avoid chaos.
So my notes, and considering I think many people might leave after this, if everybody wants to come down, we're going to take a group picture with all of the council members as well. So come on down. Bring your trophies. Don't be shy.
Bring your signs.
All right, one more round. Thank you all.
Trading it out.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Paul.
Those little paddles are. What? Oh, I was on the end.
Okay, everybody in the council chamber, you gotta squeeze right here.
Kumbaya.
It's like a team sport, you know, like a team picture. Okay, get on in front, get down on your knees in front. And you ever play team sports?
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's always a lot of fun, and I'm going to brag on our sustainability division and Jonathan. And Jonathan actually created this program, and Denver's adopted it, and now people are looking at it throughout Colorado and the nation. So we're really pleased that it's here. And early at the reception, I was asked what benefit, and I think you see a lot of different benefits, but one thing I heard is addressing individual needs, and that's what's the cool thing about this. It's what your neighborhood desires and wants. It's not a top-down, it's a bottom-up. And at the end of the day, when you can bring the community members together and have neighbors get to know one another, it's a win-win. And so I think that's truly the value. So thank you for your hard work, and again, congratulations to everyone. So with that, will the clerk please read item 5?
Item 5, Resolution 2018-29, appointing members to the Lakewood Noxious Weed Local Advisory Board.
Thank you. And so I'm going to ask for a motion, and I think Councilor Franks, you're going to read that.
Yes. I move for the adoption of Resolution 2018-29.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Councilor Harrison, would you like to comment from the screening committee?
I would. We are so lucky as residents of Lakewood. Every single time we have an opening for a committee, we get the best people of Lakewood to come and apply. And it makes it very, very difficult for the screening committee to decide who's on and who we want to come back again and later. We have two wonderful people, Celia Greenman and Barbara Fabiziak, Mary Fabiziak, that are going to be appointed to the Noxious Weed Advisory Board. And they should become your best friends if you don't like thistle and the such. So welcome aboard, ladies.
And are you here? Please stand. All right. Woo. That's great. So these are usually easy votes. We'll see. We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Passes 10 aye, 0 nays. Again, welcome. Thank you. Item 6, please.
Item 6, Resolution 2018-30, appointing members to the Lakewood Advisory Commission for an Inclusive Community.
Councilor Franks.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2018-30.
I second.
Right. We have a motion and a second. Councilor Harrison.
Again, wonderful. These people that we get are so accomplished in all that they do and want to do. The Advisory Commission is a great place for people when they're just kind of wanting to get more involved in the city. For those of you who don't know what it is a great committee setting where you can come up and look at ideas and talk about ideas that you think might make the city better. And the three that we're appointing tonight are Andrea Gelfuso, Getz. How close was I, Andrea? Okay, she's here. If you'd like to stand up, Andrea. Roger Freeman, are you here, Roger? There you are. And Rick Ash. Is Rick here? There he is. These are our 3 new ACIC members.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote. Passes 10 ayes, 0 nays. Congratulations. Welcome. We appreciate your service. We appreciate the time that you're going to give, and we look forward to getting to know you better. So you enjoy. Okay. Next up is public comment. If you bear with me. This is the point in the meeting where the public is invited to address the city council on items that did not appear on the agenda. All comments should be directed to the city council. I'll ask that all in attendance observe the decorum of the city council chambers and refrain from applause or audible support or discord with the speaker. There is a 3-minute limit per speaker. The indicator lights on the lectern right here will be green. When you're at 2.5 minutes, it'll go yellow. And when your time is up, it will go red. And I will politely try to wrap you up. So with that, we have first up Mr. Mueller. Welcome.
Good evening. Mike Mueller. You have the address. Couple of things tonight. I suppose you thought I was going to come up here and talk about your scorecard and your grades. No, I'm not going to do that. But I am going to congratulate you guys on the full weight of the city and the full weight of the legal staff crushing a neighborhood so they didn't have to have an apartment building in the neighborhood. You guys just crushed them. That poor neighborhood didn't stand a chance, did they? Anyway, next. I gave you a report on the Michael Gifford complaint that I was involved in. And it's kind of funny because we went through all this, and for a $50 fine that Michael Gifford would have gotten if he would have just said, yeah, I didn't turn it in, and went to the hearing, and it would have been $50. This turned out to be thousands of dollars by the city and thousands of dollars by me to bring this up. And the funny part about this was that as we got more involved in it, because now we weren't complaining about Michael Gifford. It was the city that was fighting us. It was the city clerk's office. It was the city attorney that was fighting us. And it got worse and worse, and they kept fighting us and fighting us over a $50 deal. Michael Gifford would have paid the $50 and have been done. But no, city attorney kept piling stuff on. Turned out to be thousands of dollars. Anyway, so we were sitting there going, you know, if that city attorney and the city clerk want to push this thing, why don't we just punk them? We'll just keep putting stuff out there and see what they do and see how far they will go. Maybe we can even get them to perjure themselves. Wouldn't that be fun? And so we punked them for months. And they kept throwing more stuff at us and more stuff at us and more legal blocks and more and blocking our core requests and doing all this stuff. And we just kept punking them to see how much we could get out of these guys, how much it was going to cost the city for a $50 fine for Michael Gifford. $50. And now it's cost thousands of dollars for me and the city. But why would they protect Michael Gifford, of all people? Well, he's kind of a big shot in the development industry. He controls a lot of money for campaigns. Matter of fact, he helped finance campaigns against you and just about everybody. Mr. Mayor knows about it. But that's why they protected him. He got another campaign finance complaint, and he settled it with no problems. He paid his $50. He moved on. But why did they fight this one so hard with me? Thousands of dollars. Anyway, I've given you all the information right here. And hopefully that you guys will look through it and evaluate it. And all the backup information is here. And I would hope that you, as a body, would would understand that how important the elections are and how completely badly this whole election was handled. And you can see it right here. It's very important that we have fair elections and good elections. Elections we can trust. And elections that we don't get pounded on if we put up a fight. Thank you for your time, and I hope you read all of this because it's really important for the whole city.
Thank you. Amara?
You want it? Well, read it. It's about you guys.
Amara? Yeah, we have a few people on the list. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, City Council. I'm here to talk about a very sensitive and disappointing subject. I'm going to talk fast because there's a lot to say. At a recent ward meeting this spring, a staff member, the Assistant Director of Economic Development, was invited to speak at the courtesy and generosity of the ward councilors about economic development in Lakewood. When he was done with his presentation, telling us about all the little retail outlets and storage units that are being built, he sat and stayed through the meeting. There were a lot of people speaking on a lot of topics. You know, we have a lot on the agenda. Toward the end of the meeting, two of us got up to speak. Another gentleman, another citizen, who got up to speak, and he prefaced his statement with, "I don't like public speaking, but I'm here because I feel this is important." And he spoke to ask citizens not just to speak at the ward meetings, but to come on Monday night and speak to you. And he made an impassioned plea. His picture was taken by the staff member, and by the time he got home, he had a letter in his inbox from the mayor of this city admonishing him, under feigning, "I'm curious and would like to talk to you about this," formally addressed. When I got up and spoke publicly, and all I was talking about this time was also encouraging people to come speak. That it's nice that everybody attends in 60s and 70s and 80s to these ward meetings, but we need people to come Monday nights when you can all hear all sides. My picture was taken in the middle while I was speaking by this staff member. By the time I got home, I too had a formal letter from the mayor of this city formally addressed to me in a way he's never addressed me in 20 years, to my business email address. Since then, we've had a citizen Saturday crying at a Ward 4 meeting for how she feels intimidated and disrespected when she comes to speak in front of this body. I've had two other citizens come to tell me how they've written to the mayor and copied the councilors, and their letter was published. So I'm not here to speak to the mayor because what the staff does might have been a mistake. But it is the leadership of your city and the person to whom it was addressed that should have squashed it. Should have said, in no uncertain terms do I accept this behavior of you documenting our citizens, Achtung, Heil Hitler, Mao Zedong, and then forwarding letters that I can then respond to these people. If you choose not to come to the meeting and hear us in person, don't have people reporting us to you and taking pictures so you're sure who you're writing to. This is beneath any mayor of any city, let alone the 5th largest city in Lakewood. So I am here to talk to the 10 councilors. And I am here to ask you to stand up to this kind of behavior and to make it clear in no uncertain terms, publicly, that you will not accept this, and that if any staff member or any member of the council uses such intimidating tactics to try to shut people up and intimidate them from speaking publicly, that you will not tolerate it. Don't tell us when we call you that we should have expected it. Don't tell us when we talk to you that we should come publicly and speak about it Monday night. You need to address this within the council. This is right out of a playbook from an email I read in 2017 from a former councilwoman to the mayor of Lakewood saying, we've got to shut these people up. We've got to stop them from coming to speak and taking up time at our Monday night meetings. We've got to get down and dirty. Again, that should have been squashed. Instead, it was participated in. And this needs to stop. We need ethics in Lakewood, not political maneuvering that screams of desperation. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to go a little bit out of order. I'm just going to address that because it's important to squash misinformation. Our staff does not communicate with me other than my city manager. So I have never received a picture from a staff member on a Saturday meeting, so I'm not sure what information or where you believe you had that, but my communique goes to our city manager, and our city manager did not send me a picture, or would our staff ever do such a thing. So normally I would just roll with public comment, but I got to stop. We're living in a factual society, and that was not factual. Ms. Waldner? Ms. Waldner, come on down. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members and City of Lakewood. I'm going to be reading a letter that a group of us in the Iber neighborhood put together. So I'm just kind of the spokesperson rather than the person that...
Sure.
Okay. So we'd like to recap a few items from the Lakewood High School work group meetings, which were held over many weeks in the summer of 2017. In the last meeting of many meetings with inexperienced facilitators, each work group, parking, pickup and drop off, and special events, provided a high-level readout and submitted their final document. These documents were never vetted as a whole group, so we didn't go through all the details in those documents, and it was never combined into a final document. There were things that were overlapping in each group and things like that. The city representatives then put their proposal together and never reviewed their proposal with the community work groups. The first time the working groups had access to view the proposal was when it was on the website for the council meeting scheduled for February 25th, 2018. Next, at the city council meeting on February 25th, a hired contractor by the Jefferson County School District provided a proposal for review. And in that meeting, we went through details of that proposal. This proposal seemed to negate previous efforts by the community working groups and the city. Their proposal became the points for council discussion. The Iber neighbors understand that the city needs to work with the school district jointly to make improvements. So we understand that. Everyone in the working group spent many hours working on a proposal, which was not included in the city council's discussion, and overall we thought our time wasn't valued. We spent many, many meetings. So for the reason for this reading today is to request a follow-up meeting with Iber neighbors facilitated by the city to cover Lakewood's recommendations and backgrounds to their original 2017 proposal. We'd like to understand, what they took from our proposal, why they made their recommendations, and we spent a lot of time working with them in these meetings. Request the official record of the high-level decisions that were made on February 25th at the city council meeting, because we're kind of unsure about all those details. I know we know that we were waiting for the school to do their parking lot, and I think they've started that. I'm not exactly sure when the completion date is. We'd like to request a kickoff plan or understand the city's piece and, when we're going to get started. Request in writing the city's approach for gathering input on changes and planned follow-up for the community. In the meeting, the recommendations from council and city leaders were to make slow and informed changes using input from the fiber neighbors. This decision is fully supported by the neighbors. Creating one-way streets in the neighborhood, promoting drop-off and pickup in the neighborhood, and allowing any Jeffco school parking in the neighborhood is not what we are looking for as solutions. These kinds of solutions turn our neighborhood into an expanded footprint of the school. So the signatures that you see on this letter were from neighbors, IBER neighbors only, that participated in these working groups, and I think we're probably missing one or two, and they were out of town. And then I had conversations with Paul Ditson, and he gave me permission to sign the letter for him. And also we have Nicole Bopp from the IBER Neighborhood Association. And that's my last comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you. We'll follow up after public comment. Mr. Plotkin.
Denise, your documents are still up here. Your documents.
Good evening, welcome.
Good evening. Good evening, Council. On April 23rd, I had sent an email to the Council in regards to the issue of parking.
Could you talk into the microphone, please? Thank you.
On April 23rd, I had sent an email to the Council in regards to the issue of parkland dedication and affordability of housing in Lakewood. I happened to mention a sentiment by one Brett Evans, and ironically, I said that I agreed with a particular and very specific point Mr. Evans had made. Mayor Paul, within minutes of receiving my email, had forwarded to his personal campaign email address. From there, he forwarded to Brett Evans along with my personal email address. Mayor might make an empty argument that he did so since Evans was mentioned. However, why did the mayor not remove my personal email address? This is unprofessional, reprehensible, and unethical. Instead of reading my letter, considering the points of view stated, and then providing a reply or taking actions, the mayor would rather forward a citizen's letter to someone who's well known for harassing people on Nextdoor and other sites. Was this done because the mayor could not handle considering another letter from a concerned citizen and would rather squelch their participation via intimidation and harassment? Let's talk about harassment. Mayor Paul, Brett Evans, Nikki Meyer, and a slew of other familiar faces are associated with a Facebook page under the name of I Love You Lakewood. Belonging to a page in itself is fine, but this is the page on which Brett Evans had posted my email along with his response. He then posted my personal email address inciting the members of the Facebook page to harass me. Mayor Paul seems to have no qualms about intimidating and harassing a citizen of the city via a dedicated group of attack dogs. So to those watching, consider the caliber of your city's leadership. Take notice. Brett Evans and other specific individuals have gone after a number of other citizens who attempted to provide opinions or facts that are opposing the views of the mayor. Yet the mayor will talk of respect and dialogue while supporting and encouraging such despicable behavior of someone he is associated with elsewhere. A couple of days ago, I spoke to a couple of residents who lived in the Green Mountain longer than I have been alive. They mentioned how ever since Adam Paul was the council member for Ward 4, he always had a knack for pretending to listen and even make them feel as if he cares, but then turn around and do something opposite. Myself and a number of others have been getting that sense a lot lately. Then they mentioned an email where the mayor was citing some information was actually false and urging those on his email list to vote against a specific set of candidates who were running for the Green Mountain Water and Sanitation Board. The original set of unverified rumors was started by Nikki Meyer and possibly others, who is the wife of the recent Ward 4 candidate, Bill Furman. Furthermore, Nikki Meyer and Brett Evans originated a Facebook page opposing the said candidates. Brett Evans later vehemently denied being a co-creator of the said page, and yet we have a screenshot showing otherwise. So the mayor will openly support falsehoods, even if it results in further harassment of city's citizens. Ironically, Mr. Evans has mostly dismissed the point of the letter I had sent in on council on April 23rd, but felt the need to go on the borderline rant to point out how I have no qualifications which are pertinent to the matters of land use. Does this mean that the citizens of the city are only allowed to engage in discussions if they have specific backgrounds? Is Mr. Evans, backed by the mayor, suggesting that the citizens are not smart enough to come up with the ideas that may actually benefit the city? By that token, maybe we should not even have the elected council, since as far as I know, the majority of the council does not possess degrees in civil engineering, architecture, or other land development-related disciplines. Maybe there is something to that, since so far the city leadership has completely dropped the ball on comprehensive zoning changes, Rooney Valley, public transit, high-tech job creation, and real solution to the affordable housing problem. When we moved to the U.S., I was under the impression that citizen harassment and intimidation would be a thing of the past, and yet here I am experiencing harassment at the hands of the mayor of Lakewood and those associated with him. I'm not sure if this intolerance is due to me simply having an opinion which the mayor does not like. I'll leave you with a copy of Denver Post from May 24th, which has an article titled "Denver Ready to Launch Apartment Program," which does a pretty good job of highlighting the problem with the assumption that if you build more boxes, the housing will become more affordable. Here's the kicker. The article specifically mentions a glut of apartment buildings, yet people cannot afford to live in them. So the developers in Denver have overbuilt and overcharged, and now the city has to deal with that. Beacon Building is way under capacity, and yet leadership has done nothing to slow down or stop the common apartment developments, but will pontificate about how we need more affordable housing. If this is the case, then use the budget surplus to subsidize the rents of the teachers, firefighters, nurses, and others, instead of asking to DeBruce. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments.
I'll leave the copy with you.
Anybody else? All right, I'll close public comment. For our Lakewood folks, imagine that we can have somebody circle back. Ms. Hodson.
I'm sorry, you're referring to the Lakewood High School
Yes.
comments? Yes, as a matter of fact, our Public Works Director is just finalizing a very comprehensive memo that describes a lot of the information that will be valuable based on the comments that we heard tonight. So I anticipate that being finalized in the next couple of days, and we'll make that available, and then we'll find out what other information that those folks in that neighborhood are interested in. I just reviewed it several pages, and I think it'll provide good information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'm just going to reiterate, staff does not take photographs of people or pick and choose who they want to deal with on any basis. And I can tell you, I have certainly sent Ms. Amara an email, and I've sent her one on an email to an email address that you've actually sent me communication on. And so when there is a conversation in the community, or in that particular instance, when you were working with the community on our fee in lieu, and I asked if you had questions, that was certainly what I felt was appropriate to hear, that there were questions and to encourage you to have a conversation or a cup of coffee. So we're always open. We're always here to talk. We're always here to communicate. And also keep in mind, any correspondence we send or we receive at the City of Lakewood is a public document. So certainly if that is not the communication that you would like to participate, I'm not sure other means, but any document that we have is public. Will the clerk please read the next item?
It's the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of items 8 through 15 inclusive. Item 8, Resolution 2018-31, creating a City Council Housing Advisory Ad Hoc Committee to recommend stakeholder membership and the scope of work for a future Housing Policy Committee. Item 9, Resolution 2018-32, as revised, creating a City Council Advisory Ad Hoc Committee regarding the Development Dialogue. Item 10, Resolution 2018-33, endorsing an amendment to Lakewood 2018-2019 Head Start grant application for purpose of submitting request to federal government for supplemental funds available to provide cost of living adjustment to staff in Head Start and Early Head Start. Item 11, Resolution 2018-34, authorizing a revocable license agreement between the City of Lakewood and Raza H. Menhas and Patricia A. Menhas along the north side of West Yale Avenue for a fence and retaining wall. Item 12, Ordinance O 2018-10, authorizing a permanent utility easement to Public Service Company of Colorado for existing underground utilities and related facilities in Bellows Park, south of West Collins Avenue, Lakewood, Colorado. Item 13, Ordinance O 2018-11, amending the Lakewood zoning ordinance.
Item 14, approving the minutes of the city council meetings of April 9th, April 23rd, and May 14th. The special city council meetings of April 9th, May 7th, May 14th, and May 21st, all of 2018. And item 15, accepting the minutes of the Advisory Commission for an Inclusive Communities annual planning meeting, the Advisory Commission for an Inclusive Communities Executive Committee meetings of July 5th and November 1st, and December 6th, 2017, and the Advisory Commission for an Inclusive Community Full Commission meetings of June 21st, November 15th, 2017, and the Lakewood Planning Commission meeting of March 7th, 2018.
Well done. Thank you. So the use of the consent agenda has been made to expedite council action. It contains both resolutions and first reading ordinances. Resolutions are items of routine nature. Members of the public will have an opportunity and moment to comment on any of the proposed resolutions. First reading ordinances appear on the agenda only for the purpose of setting future public hearing dates and ordering the newspaper publication of the proposed ordinance. No public comments will be heard this evening on first reading ordinances. The public will have the opportunity to comment on the proposed ordinances during the scheduled public hearing set forth by the city council. Any council member may request an item on the consent agenda be removed for separate council discussion. Councilor Beta?
Thank you, Mayor. And with that, I would ask that item 9 be removed from the consent agenda for separate council discussion. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So we will remove item 9. All right, I'll now open the public hearing. Same rules, 3 minutes, 2.5 green, half a minute yellow, and red will close. Mr. Minhas, you have signed up to speak on item 11. Good evening, welcome.
Thank you for allowing me to speak very briefly, and Honorable Mayor and the Honorable Councilwomen of our Ward 5 area, Dana and Karen. I live in the Westgate area, and actually on item number 11, the fence has been removed per the city planner, and we're simply just looking for the approval of the retaining wall, which I believe the city planner has approved. So pending your approval here, we would be very excited to move forward and make the Westgate neighborhood much more attractive and beautiful.
Great.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? All right. I will now close and ask for a motion.
Mayor Paul, I move for the approval of the council minutes for acceptance of the minutes of the boards and commissions. Order all ordinances introduced on first reading to be published in the Denver Post with public hearing set for the date included in the ordinance, and the adoption of resolutions, all of which are included in the consent agenda except for item 9, resolution 2018-32, which will be pulled, are included in the consent agenda, introduced into the record by the city clerk. Will that work?
Perfect. Well done. There's a motion and a second.
Second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Comments, Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a few questions regarding, let's see here. Regarding item 10 for the Head Start grant, I'm just curious, what are the salaries of the people at Head Start? I don't have issue with them getting a cost of living increase. I'd just like to know what the salaries are.
Yeah, I'll ask Brett Brentinger to come down. I know I said it wrong, sorry. Brent.
Yeah, thank you, City Council and Councilor Johnson. So they are comparable to the market rate. So we go out and do a study every year to make sure that we're in the market compared to other early childhood institutions or locations in Lakewood, Jefferson County, in that area. So they would be comparable to other early childhood education centers.
But you don't know the figure.
Well, it'll range depending on whether they're a lead teacher, a co-teacher, a bilingual assistant, a preschool assistant. So it'll range quite a bit from, $12 an hour up to $20 an hour.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And this is basically just to give a cost of living raise.
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Also, I had a few questions regarding the minutes. I'd like to see a correction on a couple of them. In my document here on the iPad on page 232, it was the evening that we were dealing with the charitable giving program, and I am totally accurately quoted as saying that I was going to support it and that the process was honorable and clean. But I'd like to have the rest of my comments added, in that I felt that the city, a role that we could also play would be to have a drop down on our website and have the charities vetted so that somebody could go in and frankly donate throughout the year. And since, are we still deleting the videos after 2 years, or are we keeping them archived?
As of the adoption of the Policy and Procedures Manual in May, we're keeping those permanently.
Oh, good. Okay, because I just want to have that added, that was part of my comment.
And may I ask you what set of minutes you're looking at, the date of the minutes?
514.
Thank you.
Okay. And then also on 514, we were dealing with the sign ordinance. And I had asked a question about an electric sign on Garrison. And apparently it was totally accurate that it could be there. But I also added the statement that there were homes across the street and directly to the south of the electric sign. And the context was, I think we need to keep that into context. Thank you. I believe that's all.
Ms. Hodson.
I just want to state that it's always been our practice that our minutes are done in summary form. So we don't typically identify every comment that's made by every city council member. So it would be up to you if that's something that you wanted revised or changed.
Okay, thank you. And I would say in the future, if council wants to do that, that can be a decision. We'd have to have more research into that. I think we did have somewhat of a briefing on that, why we do it summary form. But I think also just stating for the record, as you just did now, would suffice as to your comments, as well as the fact that the record is online in perpetuity now. So, Councilor Franks.
The other thing I wanted to add, just for the benefit of the audience, is obviously the two ordinances are on first reading, so there won't be any public comment or any discussion on that. But I did want to point out that if, for those who might have read the amending the Lakewood zoning ordinance and specifically looked at the yard signs, you would see that language wasn't updated to reflect the council's decision that we weren't going to enforce sustainable materials. That's because since that document had already moved far enough down the line that it has to stay whole, and we will have to make those changes where we made recommendations from the dais. So I wanted to explain that because it caught me a little off guard, and our assistant city manager kind of reflected on that and shared with me that those don't get in there because that document needs to stay in that form until the hearing, and that will be changed at that time. So if you notice any other sections in there that don't seem to reflect the discussion that was had, that is why those will have to be amended from the dais. So just wanted to explain that to folks.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the consent agenda minus item 9. Any more comments? Seeing none, please cast your votes. And that passes 10 ayes, 0 nays. Thank you. And Mr. Minhas, thank you and your family. I know this has been quite a journey for all folks involved, but I know the neighborhood really appreciates what you're doing, so thank you. Clerk, please read item 16.
Item 16, ordinance 2018-6, as revised on June 5th, 2018. An ordinance repealing and reenacting certain provisions of Title 14 of the Lakewood Municipal Code, including adoption by reference of the 2015 editions of the International Code Council's International Building Code, International Residential Code, including appendices E, F, and H, International Mechanical Code, International Fuel Gas Code, International Plumbing Code, including appendices B, C, D, and E, International Existing Building Code, International Energy Conservation Code, including Appendix RB, International Swimming Pool and Spa Code, International Fire Code, including appendices B, C, D, F, G, H, I, K, and L, and adoption by reference of the National Electrical Code of the National Fire Protection Association, including annexes C and H 2017 edition, and establishing the penalties therefore.
Okay, we will not make you reread that, hopefully. So I'm going to open the public hearing, because I don't see a presentation.
We will have a brief presentation by City Engineer Ann Hine.
Okay. Thank you. My apologies, my notes say no. Sorry. Good evening, Ms. Hine.
Hi, Mike.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Ann Hine. I'm the City Engineer of the Public Works Department. I have a brief update for you tonight of things that we have been undertaking since our study session. You'll remember we had a study session March 5th. That's the fourth bullet on this list. It was after about 18 months of review and input. And after the study session, we met again with the Board of Appeals, and they passed a resolution recommending approval of the ordinance as presented. There is a resolution in your packet, and the Board of Appeals chairman will speak to you tonight in public comment. The next step is council approval, and after that, the building code becomes effective. In the ordinance, there is an effective date for the building code, which we set at July 1st, based on our initial first reading. There's been a delay in the second reading due to staff availability, not due to any issues with the building code. And we are asking for an amendment tonight to change the effective date to September 1st. That will give builders and developers a chance to react to the code and prepare plans to the new code. There is a memo just behind the RFCA in your packet that has a suggested motion that will make a change to Section 13 and will change the date from July 1st to September 1st. The Lakewood Building Code is a combination of published codes from the International Code Council, and we're proposing to adopt 2015 editions of the ICC codes, and the 2017 version of the National Electric Code. In addition to the published codes, we have local amendments that help us to refine the published codes to meet conditions in Lakewood. So the amendments do tailor the published codes. They help us support other goals of the city and meet certain requirements of the Colorado law. I wanted to bring to your attention a couple of the amendments that we discussed at the study session and that we discussed with stakeholders that got the most input. The first is residential fire sprinklers. We are proposing to amend that requirement out of the ordinance, but the option still exists. So if someone does want to put sprinklers in a single-family home, we have a way to review and inspect that. The other provisions that garnered a lot of attention were amendments that support the sustainability plan, mainly with respect to energy and water efficiency and waste reduction for demolition waste recycling and construction waste recycling. So we are recommending tonight that the ordinance be approved with an amendment to the effective date, changing the effective date from July 1st to September 1st. Mike Sizemore, the building official, is here tonight to answer questions, as is the West Metro Fire Protection District Fire Marshal Bruce Kroll, and Jonathan Wachtel is here from the Sustainability Division. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I will now open the public hearing. Same rule, 3 minutes, 2.5 green, half yellow, red, you're done-ish. I'm going to invite our representative from the Board of Appeals, our chairman, to come on down. You are first on our list. Good evening.
Mayor Paul, councilmen and women. I am here, my name is Donaldo Vissani. I am the chair of the Board of Appeals, and I am here to support the resolution and the ordinance that has been proposed. We've reviewed the various code language that Mike Sizemore and Ann Hine have proposed, and the rest of the city staff, and I'm 100% behind what we approved, and I just wanted to state that, and also appreciate, since I'm biking today, that I'm in shorts of the Jewel repavement, so I appreciate that part too.
Great, thank you. A new bike lane for you. Yes, thank you. Yeah, well, we appreciate everything the board does. I know that you're not always busy, but this has probably kept you very busy. John Harris. Good evening, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members. My name is John Harris. I am a long-standing employee of Read Art and Imaging, a brand new company here to locate in Lakewood. We've been a Colorado company for several decades, and we're happy to be here. I put my name on that list because I didn't know exactly how things operated here at council. This is my first visit, so I apologize for some confusion. My point of concern is with an element within Chapter 9 of the International Fire Code that specifies that new construction requires sprinkler systems for any woodworking operation that occupies a space in excess of 2,500 square feet. As the code is written, I find it to be very overreaching in that a woodworking operation could be defined as something as simple as a sheet of sandpaper or a handsaw in an empty room of 3,000 square feet. So I feel as the code is written currently, it is overreaching and overburdensome. I would like those individuals who may be of interest in this process to reevaluate that particular section of code in Chapter 9 so that it reads more applicably to the amount of square footage within a space that is actually dedicated to the generation of the fine particulates that might be flammable, in our case, sawdust. So in our situation, we have approximately a slightly over 5,000 square foot space. About a third of that contains equipment that creates this flammable dust. So if we simply had that sheet of sawdust in that same space, we would still be in a situation where we would have to install sprinklers. So again, my recommendation or request is that the council and other members reevaluate that particular clause and potentially make some amendments so that businesses such as ours aren't required to spend excessive amounts of money or extreme amounts of money to put in a sprinkler system for a relatively small woodworking area. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Freeman. Roger. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Paul, City Council. My name is Roger Freeman. I'm pleased to be speaking tonight on the Sustainability Night, obviously. And tonight I'm, as you know, a Lakewood citizen and active as an environmental advocate. But I'm speaking on behalf of a specific company tonight for purposes of this building code. The company's name is 5280 Waste Solutions. And in the audience, you'll note that two other folks signed up to speak tonight. In the interest of time, we'll just present a consolidated testimony. And the two other folks who have signed up are Doug Gannett, who's a partner at 5280 Waste Solutions, and Brian Chesson, who's a chief operating officer there. They're both available if you have questions or more specific points to embellish on anything that I say. But I thought I'd summarize our testimony and save us the time to have everybody parade up, if that's okay, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. 5280 Waste Solutions, you may recognize by our bright green bins across Denver. We are exclusively involved in handling construction and demolition waste, which is the subject of a specific part of your building code tonight. Section 3302.21 and 3303 add to the code a specific requirement that C&D waste be recycled, specific C&D waste that's listed there. We support that as a trend that's reflecting what's going on across our state and what our customers are asking for. And we're just here to say that we think that this is a growing business and an important part of our business. Currently, we have 1,600 bins across the city. That's why you see our bins so frequently. That reflects the building boom that you know and love in Lakewood. And all that waste is carted out to the landfill at present. We have been given a grant to build a recycling center to handle this type of waste. So that center is going to be just about 50 blocks north of here, maybe more, on 62nd Avenue. It won't be in Lakewood, but it will be available to handle and ultimately sort the different types of materials that are listed in this ordinance. We've gotten to this point because of the business demands. We have customers who want recycling as part of the services provided, and there are a number of cities who've already passed this, as Jonathan, I think, previously reported. I even have a little brochure from the city of Fort Collins identifying all the different construction companies and others who are helping to serve this part of the industry. So we think that we are equipped to take what's listed here. The question had come up, I think, in first reading, is this something that's too ambitious for the city? We're equipped to do it. We're excited about the fact that businesses are springing up as a result of this type of recycling, and sustainability is not just the environment, but it's economics as well, and this is part of the economic sustainability in Lakewood. So we support that particular provision, and I thought I'd make that comment, and obviously invite you to pose questions to me or to our two other representatives. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. You spoke for 3 and have 25 seconds left.
Well
done.
That's a first for an attorney, let me tell you. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to your colleagues as well. Elizabeth, come on down. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and City Councilors. I'm Elizabeth Molinar, and I'm a resident of Ward 1. As an anthropologist, I do research, publish, and teach on the social cultural impacts of energy production and consumption. I wanted to take the opportunity today to speak about updating our building code to the 2015 code. First of all, thank you all for your work leading up to updating the building code for the city of Lakewood. Updating the code from the 2009 to 2015 code is a big step towards reaching the city's sustainability goals. The 2015 code contributes to significantly more energy efficient buildings. Insulation will be improved, but most of all, air change is radically tightened, going from 7 air changes under the 2009 code to 3 air changes under the 2015 code. Excuse me. This level of energy efficiency, depending on the temperature, the thermostat is turned on, of course, can result in $800 to $900 savings per year on the energy bill for a modest home. For homeowners, this is about $25,000 over the time span of a mortgage that they can save. This is likely a great deal more than their investments and added mortgage cost in order to ensure the house is up to code. The added cost of building well will be paid off 3 to 4 times in energy savings over the time of the mortgage payment. Also, these new energy efficient buildings are much more comfortable to live in. But what is more, this money that the people save on their energy bills will remain with a 7 times economic multiplier in the local Lakewood economy and will benefit our community. Additionally, probably just as much, if not more, will be saved by the community in health and environmental cost. This is truly sustainable. There will be money saved, giving families a little bit more resilience. Money that will be circulating in the Lakewood economy and strengthening our community in more than economic ways. And we will be using less fossil fuels and have a cleaner and healthier environment for the future. I ask you to finalize your vote for the planned changes to the building code tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Michael. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council men and women. My name is Michael DeRosia. I have a photovoltaic energy consulting business. I'm a resident of Ward 4. I support the current updates to the provisions of the Lakewood municipal code by building staff and the city planners, specifically the adoption of the provisions that require photovoltaic ready and electric vehicle ready homes. I have served my country as a United States Marine. My military service included participation in the Persian Gulf War, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. My dad spent hours watching CNN and seeing the oil wells burning. I was the soldier that was walking through those deserts while the midday sun was being blocked out by billowing black smoke. I was breathing that smoke. It comes to me as no surprise when I encounter those who have served our country in the military that have decided to continue their service by moving towards careers in renewable sources of energy, cleaner energy, much less polluting energy, and a solution to the challenge of climate change. These are men and women that have seen firsthand conflicts and threats around the world. I'm going to pivot just a little bit over to my business side and my experiences at the table with residents around Lakewood and around the Front Range of Colorado. My experience at the kitchen table is talking to potential customers about photovoltaic energy for their homes, many that are Lakewood residents. For them, it's about choice and the decision to have a little more control over their energy and being able to do their part for their home, their neighborhood, their city, and yes, for the planet. For the families I talk with, it's about choice and being able to have the ability to be more green, environmentally and socially more responsible. And actively plan financially, using their money wisely by taking control of producing power and using cleanly produced electricity over polluting fossil fuels. It starts with smart city building codes that allow for this individual choice when people want it. I urge the City Council to vote yes on this item.
Thank you. Thank you for your service. Paul, Christian, you're up. Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. So thank you, Mayor and council members. I appreciate having the opportunity to speak before you tonight and just reiterate on what the two other presenters were starting to build from that. I'm Paul Kreischer. I'm principal of Lightly Treading Energy and Design. We're an engineering consulting firm that's based in Denver, but does a lot of work in Lakewood as well as across the state of Colorado and into Wyoming. And I want to state that you are doing a great job by considering moving your building codes to the 2015 ICC, as well as the ASHRAE 90.1 2013 standards that apply to commercial buildings. Without these codes being in place, the 2015 code, the ICC 2015 code for residential and multifamily buildings up to 5 stories, as well as the ASHRAE 90.1 standard for commercial and multifamily buildings, as well as the third-party quality insurance inspections and tests that go with it, homeowners, building owners have faced a lot of risks over the years, and it's been a lot of our work for bad, honestly, but been good for our business, but bad for the people that own these buildings, because buildings that have been not built to these types of code standards have faced problems with condensation and mold. So a health safety issue that in our dry climate we shouldn't face, but we get calls, especially in the wintertime, on it with some regularity. Air exchange that can be way too little on mild days to maintain adequate fresh air, and way too high on cold or hot days to keep utility bills low. And also heating and cooling systems, which may work great on paper, but in the reality, without the third-party inspections and tests being done, they oftentimes don't perform properly. So why people have cold bedrooms above garages and the like come into play with that. So on the residential and multifamily side, the third-party testing comes from energy raters as well as engineers. My company, we have the pleasure of having both of those people within our house. On the residential and low-rise multifamily side, your adoption of the 2015 code will be very beneficial provide very beneficial information of the home's future utility bills if and when the builder chooses the performance path. And the handout that I gave to the clerk, were you able to hand that out? Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. So what that is that you were handed out is just an example of an energy rating certificate from a property that we'd worked on actually in Brighton. But it's a multifamily property. One of the nice things about that document comes through an energy rating, part of the code, part of performance path, but it gives the buyer basically a miles per gallon rating on their home. So they can see what is the estimated utility bill is going to be for this property, as opposed to going off of similar bills from other buildings or things like that, or guessing at it at best. It gives them very good insight to what's going on. The building that you see here in this example had high quality elements to meet and exceed code, including blown cellulose in the walls and ceiling, excellent air tightness, Energy Star windows and patio doors, closed combustion, high efficiency water heating, and ground source heat pumps for its heating and cooling, which currently has a 30% federal tax credit associated with it for residential and low-rise multifamily properties. That has a lot of the clients that we work with very interested in looking at that. So I recommend the council and the building department please consider promoting the use of the performance path with builders because of that added certificate beyond just the prescriptive parts of code, because that information I think is something that can be very valuable to people buying and renting homes. As I conclude, since much of the housing that developers and builders are wanting to build in Lakewood are multifamily projects, I want to focus on an important detail within code, which Elizabeth, two speakers before me, started to touch on, and that's air tightness. So this may be more of a devil in the detail thing for Mark, the building official, but one of the key things we've learned in our time working on multifamily buildings is that there's a standard within the code saying 3 air changes per hour is what you must meet in building a home. And that's great for homes that are more than 1,500 square feet. Okay. But ones that are smaller than that have a very difficult time getting there because the volume of the space gets smaller, even though the walls don't proportionally shrink with it. And that's where the air leakage happens. So as you get into smaller spaces, it's hard to meet that standard. So I will wrap with that and just say thank you for supporting this improved amendment to your codes. It's going to reduce operating costs monthly and annually for the people that live within Lakewood. And I'm happy to take questions that you may have now or at the end of other public comments.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Horstman. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. My name is Ron Horstman. I live in Ward 5, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to comment on your decision, upcoming decision to adopt the 2015 building codes. It has the goals and sustainability plan that we have in the city will improve the quality of life for all of the residents of Lakewood. But I want to comment on a connected next step, and that is building codes have an impact on new construction and remodel projects, but there's an even bigger opportunity with existing buildings. According to the building permit records, 833 new single-family dwellings were built in Lakewood in the last 5 years. That represents 2.5% of the existing or the total single-family dwellings in Lakewood. And it only represents 1.5% of all the dwelling units in Lakewood. So you see it's a very small percentage. So the numbers don't include the commercial industrial buildings. There are 5,844 commercial and industrial establishments in the city of Lakewood that aren't included in that, and the opportunities in those buildings is even greater than in the residential sector for energy savings. So existing buildings is a huge sector in need of retrofit assistance. So Excel's programs for existing buildings, while they're helpful, provide a limited assistance and clearly are insufficient to help Lakewood meet their sustainability goals. We'd like to suggest Lakewood the city of Lakewood take another bold step that is in concert with the building code update and establish a self-sustaining program to improve the efficiency of existing building inventory. Such a program must be a long-term or a permanent program in order to realize the many possible benefits. The benefits of an existing building retrofit program impact us economically, politically, socially, and environmentally. So I have one idea here that I want to share with you.
There you go.
Thank you. For over 5 years, Summit County has had this sustainable building code checklist that features a point system derived from the following parameters. A list of mandatory requirements. B, a formula that assesses points for square feet, number of outdoor fireplaces, number of hot tubs, square foot of outdoor heated surfaces, and square foot of conditioned space. And C, a list of secondary choices that award points for energy efficiency measures and renewable energy options. And D, a formula that awards and subtracts points to arrive at a number greater than or equal to 0 in order to obtain a building permit. This idea has both prescriptive and performance aspects to choose from, which appeal to a great segment of the population. This idea can be modified to include the options for builders and homeowners to pay a fee in lieu of the options listed on this form. The fee is one way of funding a permanent program to address retrofits in the larger existing building stock, and the speakers following me will expand on this idea. My past experience in city management had a keen focus on energy opportunities in my city, and in my present position at Western Area Power Administration as Energy Program Manager, I can't stress enough how beneficial such a program can be for a city such as Lakewood. I support the adoption of the 2015 building codes, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Barb Mills-Bola? Good evening.
Hi.
Welcome back.
So there are three of us actually who are going to speak on this topic, and they're coming right behind me, so I'll just get started. My name is Barb Mills-Bria. I'm a structural engineer, and I'm living in Ward 4. And I really want to echo Ron's gratitude for thanking you guys for adopting this new code. And as he indicated, there are other programs that are in effect already in Colorado that can also benefit Lakewood and both individuals and the community as a whole. So I'm going to talk about the REMP Core program, which is currently in action in Aspen and Pitkin County. And it's two acronyms. The first one is CORE, which is a Community Office for Resource Efficiency. That works cooperatively with businesses, individuals, utilities, and government entities to create measurable improvements in energy and water efficiency. And this is in order to benefit the environment and develop a more sustainable economy. CORE was established in 1994, so it's been around for a while, and it was to create a sustainable energy future in the Roaring Fork Valley. Second part is REMP, and that stands for Renewable Energy Mitigation Program. So it was launched in 2000 by CORE and Pitkin County and the city of Aspen. It's designed to offset energy and environmental impacts and greenhouse gas emissions produced by new homes that are over 5,000 square feet that also have non-complying exterior snow melt, pools, spa systems. So it's a little different than our community, but this program could be adapted to Lakewood. So first, I want to show you a high-end home and what the cost would be for that home. So I took as an example through their calculating a house of 8,000 square feet. This is a pretty sweet house. You know, it's got a swimming pool, nice sized pool, heated. It's got a spa, and of course they may not be there when it snows, so they have snow melt on their driveway. Through the system in Pitkin County, it would cost that homeowner $156,000 into this REMP program, which they can totally mitigate by just installing photovoltaics, ground source heat pump, solar hot water system to offset their carbon footprint. Now here's another example. So these are more typical homes that would look like they could be here in Lakewood. And as you can see, the cost to these homes would be zero because they don't have the square footage and the exterior energy usage. The money that is collected into CORE is distributed then to the community in the form of grants and rebates, and it helps schools, rec centers, moderate and low-income families make their homes and businesses more efficient. So the money coming in from high-end folks then helps offset moderate and low-income families. So there's always this policy was expanded to include commercial projects in 2009. And I want to address real quickly any Tabor concerns because because REMP establishes this mitigation payment option, it's not subject to Tabor. Builders and homeowners are not required to pay the cost because they can opt to offset their energy usage with these mitigating PV and solar thermal and ground source heat pump. And I just wanted to say the program has been reviewed and audited multiple times since its inception and has not raised any issues in Tabor.
Great. Thank you. Next up is Carrie and then Mona.
Good evening, Mayor Paul and City Councilors. My name is Carrie Sonneborn, and I've been involved in the city's Sustainable Neighborhoods program pretty much since its inception. When discussing the REMP Core program that Barb just briefly outlined, I think it's important to give some examples of how the funds collected actually benefited individuals in the local community in Pitkin County. As you may know, Colorado Mountain College is a junior college serving students across the western slope. The college received funds to do energy efficiency upgrades at several campuses, including LED lighting, a 95% efficient boiler, and roof insulation. The total project cost was $200,000, of which CORE provided $75,000. The resulting carbon savings was 2,470 tons over the lifetime of the project, which is equivalent to taking 520 cars off the road or 225 homes off the grid. Another example is Blue Creek Ranch, a subdivision that was supported by CORE to assist 7 single-family affordable homes to achieve high energy efficiency. 2 were designed to be zero energy, that is super efficient homes, and one of the homes won the American Institute of Architects Award in the Colorado West chapter for affordable housing in 2005. Aspen Consolidated Sanitation District also received funds for a 72 kilowatt photovoltaic array and to do an energy efficient retrofit of exterior lighting at wastewater treatment plants. And another example, a family of 3, a mom, a dad, and a young son, had to replace their boiler shortly after moving into their 1,000 square foot affordable housing unit. The couple really wanted to go with a high efficiency model to cut utility bills in the future, but the only issue was the price tag. It was going to be $6,000 to buy this high efficiency boiler, which they just didn't have that money laying around. Hence, they applied for a CORE rebate, and that knocked down the price by 25%. And then further, CORE connected the couple to a low-interest energy efficiency loan. And this financing converted an expensive one-time bill into a fairly modest monthly payment that they could handle while providing those ongoing energy savings that they were seeking. So I think it's easy to imagine any of these projects taking place in Lakewood, helping families in the community to be more energy efficient. And as others have said, energy efficiency doesn't just save money on a utility bill. It has a multiplier effect for the local economy because it keeps that money local where it may be spent locally. So I would just like to encourage you to consider a program like this for Lakewood so that our local economy can help our residents and businesses be energy efficient. And this is a program that's also had almost 2 decades of success right here in Colorado. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mona, come on down. Good evening.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm Mona Newton, and I'm the Executive Director for the Community Office for Resource Efficiency. So you've been hearing about the Renewable Energy Mitigation Program tonight, which I want to tell you, a lot of times people say, oh, that's Pitkin County. But this program has actually been adopted in a lot of communities across Colorado, Eagle County, Telluride, and other states as well. Ketchum, Idaho, and some other communities have adopted it. And several people have mentioned that you have a sustainability plan, which I'm actually aware of. And you're looking for resources. How are you going to meet those goals? How are you going to meet your sustainability goals, and where those resources are going to come from? This could potentially be one of those resources to help you support the energy efficiency and renewable energy that you would like to seek, that goes beyond building codes. Building codes are great, and it's great to see that you're adopting the 2015 IECC and all the associated chapters that go along with it, because that's incredibly important. Because if we're going to achieve our goals, we have to start bending that curve down. Building codes keep us flat on energy consumption and emissions, but we need to figure out how to decrease that, to start bending that curve downward in order to achieve that. So with the Renewable Energy Mitigation Program, what we've seen is that for every dollar invested, because you have the option, as previous speakers have said, you have the option to pay into the REMP fund, or you mitigate on site. You mitigate that excess energy. And this program can be scaled. It can be scaled to 2,500 square foot homes, 3,000 square foot homes. As we've seen over the years, homes are getting larger and larger. And so what do we do? How do we handle that? You may not have snowmelt in Lakewood, but you're going to have air conditioning. So there may be an opposite way of looking at this and scaling the program to meet your needs. So you can scale it, you can use those dollars to support programs. And CORE is a third party, if you will. So it's not taking the city and the county of Aspen and Pitkin County or Eagle County or other communities that have another entity that manages the funds. We are charged with developing programs. We take them to the CORE board, which is made up of electeds, and then we take it to city council, and then we take it to the county commissioners, and they approve our programs. So there's a lot of oversight there. And then we're able to use those monies to offer rebates to residents. We have an income qualified program or income eligible program, and we've served about over 100 families, additional families beyond the low income program. You have your very low income program, but we serve a higher income category, and some people call it working poor. Some people, there's a various category, but those folks who may not be able to invest in energy efficiency, but they want to or they need to, and so we're able to serve those folks with those funds. And then somebody mentioned schools. We're able to help schools put renewable energy systems on them. And I know Excel has a lot of different programs. We actually partner with our utilities as well. We partner with Holy Cross Energy, we partner with Black Hills Energy, and we partner with the City of Aspen Utilities. So it's a very good partnership with the utilities because they're doing some work and then we're able to augment that. So it's really important. As I started to mention, the dollars that we're able to leverage, for every dollar that's invested, we leverage $6 because we don't pay outright for anything. So that's that economic development piece that's really important. It creates jobs in your community. It creates sustainable jobs in the sustainability sector. And even though Excel is right here in our community, and that was part of your consent agenda, the money still leaves your community. So if I have my numbers right, about, I wish I could remember, but there's a certain amount of money that leaves your community every time you pay your utility bill. So if you save that energy, you keep that money here and it gets turned over. So anyway, thank you for consideration of going beyond the building code, and I encourage you to do that. Thanks. Good night.
Thank you. Don? Mr. Sorensen? Welcome.
Thank you. Let's see. I'll start right here. So my job in this, wait a minute, I should start out. My name is Don Sorensen. I'm an electrical engineer. I live in Ward 1 over by the water treatment facility over there. My job in this sequence is to sort of paint a picture and pull things together for you, and what a CORE-like program might look like for Lakewood. And let me move this just a little bit. So all the parts of this have been discussed already. So I'm just going to kind of go through it really quickly and try to, reaffirm the points in your mind and kind of pull this picture together. So on the left side over there, we see the function of what would be the Public Works Department. They are the initial filter on anything coming in terms of finding jobs or projects that are high energy usage projects. And they in turn make recommendations to mitigate those impacts, those carbon impacts, those high energy usage scenarios, which were mentioned before. The buyer then, or the project owner, has the option, the decision to make to include those options. That would be renewable energy options, most likely, ground source heat pump, solar, that sort of thing. And if they decide they do not want to do that, they make a payment into this fund. And it's the Lakewood Office of Resource Efficiency. I picked that name out because it seems familiar to you now. It's a 501c3 organization. And if that buyer decides that they want to implement those recommendations, those renewable recommendations, there's no fee. And they just go on and they get their project approved. And of course, if a project is small and doesn't have a big energy impact, it just falls straight through to the bottom of the scenario. The middle of the diagram is this fund, this fund that would be used to fund the right side of the diagram. And of course, ultimately that fund would probably be able to subscribe to funds or resources from other agencies. That'd be the federal government or state programs, institutional grants, so on and so forth. And of course, it has the oversight from the Lakewood City Council and the Lakewood City Manager's Office. And then on the right side, you would have a group of people that would implement this program. It would be called the LORE Program Management and Marketing Team. They would put this program together, much as they have in Pitkin County, and they would go off and put together ideas for how to outreach to homeowners, provide energy audits, make recommendations, because you got to be able to get to the point where you can tell people what they need and help prescribe or recommend solutions, because a lot of folks don't know, right? They don't know what they don't know, and they need people to help them or consult with them. Ultimately, they would recommend projects to the board that would be managing LORE, and those projects would be funded in terms of grants and rebates, and that would go for residential and commercial customers, possibly institutional as well. So that's my point on that, and I'll leave that diagram with you. And I think my light's still green here, so I'm going to make a couple more points.
48 seconds.
I think I can do it. So the last thing that struck me about this as I was doing my research on this is the impact to the city in terms of the economy. And some of these points have already been made. But like that first item, for low-income families, 17% of the income can go to energy. Well, you knock their energy bill down, they can go to college, or they avoid debt, or whatever it is. That's an important point. Every dollar invested in an energy program results in $2.53 in non-energy community benefits. That's a DOE number. Shifting $1 million in energy purchases away from a utility results in 17 community jobs versus 10 community jobs. $1 avoided in utility billing costs is $2.4 in the community. So there's no question that energy efficiency, energy projects for the community, for residences, for its businesses, makes good business sense.
Great.
I'm done.
Thank you. Come on down. You got this figured out. And it saves me mispronouncing your name.
Good evening. My name is Lauren Mayo. I'm a Ward 1 resident, dad, and a small business owner with a MBA, business development and finance background. And I have the pleasure of announcing to you that I'm the last speaker in the string. So I'll wrap up for Clean Energy Lakewood's input tonight. So we support the code upgrades. We applaud the staff and the city's leadership for these well-planned upgrades, which will meaningfully reduce the impacts of new construction on existing Lakewood residents. In parallel, we've been working with staff on the Excel MOU, and it has revealed its limitations. Excel is unable to contribute much to Lakewood beyond what it does for the whole state. It's now crystal clear that Lakewood must implement additional self-standing programs in order to reach the goals defined in our sustainability plan. To this effect, we've presented valuable existing models from other local communities. These models can help Lakewood's far larger existing building stock to also upgrade and reduce its impacts. The model has 8 key advantages, lots of advantages for one model. It establishes a self-standing Lakewood program, giving our city local control over its energy future. It leverages existing Excel programs to our city's benefit, both increasing Excel incentives to our residents and reducing our community's dependence on this for-profit out-of-state monopoly. 3, it adds no costs on low-income and modest home construction. Quite the contrary, it sets up these new homeowners to reduce their energy expenses ongoingly. 4, it does not add costs on existing residents and voters, something you might be all sensitive to. It only offers help and incentives to them to reduce their energy costs. 5, if designed to this effect, it can help slow down luxury construction and entice builders to build affordable homes for regular people. 6, it keeps money in Lakewood with a very meaningful economic multiplier, up to 7 times, depending on the economists you turn to. 7, it offers significant environmental and health benefits to all Lakewood residents, benefits which have an incredibly high economic multiplier for all of us and for our children. And 8, it has passed the test of time in avoiding Tabor constraints. So tonight we ask our mayor and council for two actions. Please vote yes on the well-planned and meaningful building code upgrades. And two, please express interest in the model we've presented you tonight, and perhaps direct staff to study this existing model and to report back to you with a concrete proposal adapting the model for Lakewood. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, that exhausts the roster. Anybody else wish to speak on the building code? All right, seeing none, I'll close public comment. And I will thank you all for your very informative presentation. Everything was a little bit different. A lot of great information, a lot of great enthusiasm. So before we go into the council questions and comments, I'm going to ask Councilor Franks for a motion.
On the amendment for the date first.
Yeah.
I move that all instances of the date of July 1, 2018 in Section 13 of Ordinance O 2018-06 be replaced with the date of September 1, 2018.
So 1 second, maybe I advised wrong. So we have a different motion sheet up here, I think, so 1 second.
We need to read the original motion first for the adoption of the ordinance, and then
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Graham.
Probably the best way to do the motion would be to move for adoption of the ordinance with those particular changes as part of that motion, and then get a second, and then move forward.
But well, the question is, though, so there's the issuance date of September 1st. So is that that's the right motion?
Right. You have two motions. You first, as the clerk said, you do need to have a motion to bring it before you can amend anything in the ordinance. But you could combine those two.
Okay. All right.
Into one, and then
we don't have a second at this time, so we'll just start over. Thank you.
We're going to wing it with no script here. Let's see how we do. All right. I move for the adoption of Ordinance O 2018-6 with the following amendment to change all instances of the date of July 1st, 2018 in Section 13 of Ordinance 2018-6 be replaced with September 1, 2018 on second and final reading.
Second.
All right, well done. We have a motion and a second. So let's go to council questions. Councilor Skilling. Or comments.
Maybe Mr. Sizemore can speak to it. We had a gentleman speaking about the woodworking section, although for the life of me, because of this iPad, I can't get to that. So can you speak on that? Is there an ambiguity? To be honest, I didn't look at the woodworking section that closely. So I'm just wondering if there's something to that point that we could look at. Could you point me to that?
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. Mike Sizemore, building official. That's a provision that's simpatico in the building code. The fire code and the building code have the same language, the 2,500 square feet. The way he worded it certainly didn't seem like it was something that we couldn't consider. It still gets us to the same place possibly. But I'd certainly want to include the fire marshal in that, and he may be the best person to ask your question. So, Bruce, do you have anything to add to that? Bruce Kroll, the fire marshal. Okay, thank you.
Well, any evening.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. Any evening that the council's talking about the fire code is a good evening, so I appreciate that. The 2,500 square feet, it's certainly a very specific requirement. And see, it comes from a couple places. One, it goes through the whole vetting process at the international level where subject matter experts, fire code officials, building code officials consider that, and it's been in the code at least since 2006. I didn't look any earlier than that, so it's been unchallenged for all that time through that vetting process. And then your own city's appeal board also heard that and considered those details and found it agreeable. So the 2,500 square feet accomplishes two things. One is it defines the size of a shop. So then if the business thrives and the shop continues to build and put more equipment in there, at least there's a limit to how big of a space that takes up. Second, when you're talking about dust and sawdust, the way that ignites and explodes is pretty dramatic. It's certainly a YouTube thing if you want to look at something exploding. And it causes two explosions. There's a smaller one first that shakes all the dust loose. Then there's quite a large explosion after that. So if we can contain that to a smaller defined 2,500 square feet, the damage is then confined. And lastly, the code doesn't just protect the business owner. It also looks at protecting the employees and the customers that come into a commercial setting, as well as the surrounding businesses that would be affected by an explosion in that sort of a shop. So it's a really quick synopsis of nuts to bolts.
Who determines if it's a woodworking operation, that term? Because I think that's what the gentleman was speaking to, Mr. Harris was speaking to, that who determines woodworking? He brought up the extreme example of somebody with a piece of sandpaper, doing something with a block of wood, as opposed to somebody that's got some giant woodworking routers and nonstop stuff going on. I get why that might be an extreme example, but how do we reconcile those ideas? The woodworking definition.
And that's a legitimate good question. The code has intent to it. So the intent isn't to have a commercial operation where somebody's sitting on a bench whittling and sandpapering something. It's a commercial operation that uses mechanical equipment to create a retail type product on a regular basis. And so if you were to say, compare that to somebody who wants to open a car painting, they could say, well, I only paint one car a month, so why should I have to comply with somebody who does 20 a day? Because once you have that kind of a process, it can expand to, hopefully the business thrives and gets bigger. So there's a reasonable judgment there of what would constitute enough sawdust production. And the code doesn't go into the labor of listing out dozens of different options. It just looks at, is this a commercial operation creating a retail product on a regular basis? Yeah.
Your office would look at that when you're looking at the intent.
And the building official does as well. It's in the building code in the same language.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you for the explanation. My only other comment would, and that's it for the fire marshal, but my only other comment was on thank you very much, on the REMCOR folks. I've had the privilege of listening to them in the past, of meeting with them, and they really know what they're talking about. They've come with a lot of facts, done a lot of research on this. And as we were speaking a moment ago, this could be an ACIC project, which works with staff. So, I think it's ACIC. It has its own dedicated, you'd have that project that works with staff. So I'd be in favor of looking at that. And who knows where it goes. You could take a la carte parts of it, do buffet style, whatever you want. But it's certainly something to look at, and these people have put in a lot of work on it. So I think we need to give them that next step.
Well, I think as we move closer, if that's something council wants to do as a direction, that'd be fantastic. And if I might also maybe give a little bit more context for the woodworking, it's certainly something that many of us, it's a business that's housed in Ward 2. It's a business that started in the city of Lakewood and drifted out and came back, not due to their choosing, but due to another government and some challenging issues with the previous government. So there is an operation. The police or the fire chief and I met with them on Friday. Councilors LeBeer and Vincent have been out there, as well as Councilor Johnson. And it is a challenging kind of one of those issues, I think, where you want to jump in and make it okay because you understand the plight of this company. But I think we also have to be careful in what you heard with the safety of the workers as well as the firefighters, first responders, customers. And so what my hope would be is to, I know I had a call from Mr. Hutchison today that the building department is going to go back out and meet with them, and there are people looking for solutions to try to help make this an amenable situation for your business. And I hope that we can get to that, and I think you have a lot of commitment from people trying to get us there. Councilor LeBeer.
I was just going to add to some of the questions about the fire code. I guess my question was, it's sort of related to what Councilor Skilling said, which was, is the code too broad in the way that we define woodworking? I think it was kind of answered a little bit in there, but I don't know if you want to add to that or... Yep.
Chief, if you just want to sit down too, might be easier for you.
And I say that because I went down there and I looked at it, and I understand what some of their concerns are about how we're defining woodworking, because I know they have a few different woodworking machines down at this business, and it's not a primary part of their business, but certainly seems to fit within this code.
Well, what we'd look at again is the general idea of, is this a retail production process? Then when something like sawdust production accumulates over time, so even if you have a smaller operation, over time you end up with the same size of a problem as you would with more machinery than those. So the code is attempting to protect the wide variety of applications that could occur in a community, and then with some kind of bottom line judgment.
Okay. And then am I right in understanding that if we adopt these codes today, this is when we mention in the code that we're adopting in reference, where that means we're adopting the entirety of the 2015 ICC code, is that correct?
That is correct. What we've got before you tonight are amendments to those codes. And if you recall, we put copies of all the codes that we're considering in council study room, and yes, we'll be adopting all those plus these amendments.
Okay, thank you. I guess my last comment would just be, I feel like, perhaps, how often do we adopt these? Do we adopt these annually or every other 5 years, or what is that?
The codes, sorry.
Okay.
The codes are published every 3 years. So they're vetted out, voted on every 3 years. Our goal is to adopt them every 3 years, not wait 6 years. So 3 years.
Okay, then I guess I'll just leave with my comment is that I feel like there's a lot here, and I feel like I'm adopting something that's giant, and I don't have a great grasp of, which I hate to admit, but I hope in the long term we figure out a process to have a better sense of how these codes operate and interact with citizens, and how we can be better prepared to have a better sense of that, like if we're reviewing these through a committee or something like that, because I feel like the process for me has been a little bit disjointed. That's not a comment to staff or anything, that's just a comment to my understanding of how we're coming about adopting these codes. So, thanks.
All right. Councilor Abel.
I have a concern about deciding the problem of dust collection with the size of the operation. It would seem that if we're looking at a 5,000 square foot operation and they find out that they would be less regulated if they were in 2,500 square feet, a large operation may try to cram more production into a smaller space in order to avoid the regulation, as opposed to spreading out a little bit. I guess sawdust is a lot like grain dust, an explosive power, but a lot of grain elevators have been brought down by that. But to put us, if we just look at the size, the square footage of an operation and not the actual production of dust, we may be going the wrong way here. It might be encouraging people to use the same amount of equipment in a smaller space, and confine the same amount of dust into a smaller square footage, which makes it more volatile. So I would be interested in some other means of regulation than square footage in that case. The folks with the core presentation did a fine job. I didn't think at first I would be swayed to that consideration, but I think it is certainly worth having the ACIC look at. Sort of a community chest for energy efficiency. Not a bad idea. At least something worth looking at and discussing.
Councilor Beda.
Thank you, Mayor. Let me just ask a couple of questions here, make sure I understand where we're at. So I'm understanding we have a business here that under the current code is in compliance. It's not in the compliance, even under the current code. So the code that we're adopting doesn't make any difference, really. They're going to be out of compliance under the current code, or they're going to be out of compliance under the code we're adopting. So why are we dealing with this now? It seems to me we're holding up the train for a problem that's already in existence, and we're not going to solve it tonight. There's no way the council here is in a position to solve this problem, and I don't understand why we're going to hold up the whole process of adopting this code, which everybody seems to agree, but for this one issue, ought to be adopted, it seems. So. They need to continue to work with our staff to see if they can come to some sort of a compromise or a resolution on the interpretation and application. Maybe they'll have to make some changes. I don't know. And if in the long run they need to come back to council then and ask for some sort of a amendment or modification of the code, fine. But I'm certainly not inclined to start rewriting the code tonight on this sort of short notice on something that's been adopted by experts that know what they're doing. So my feeling is we need to move forward and adopt this thing tonight. And if at some point down the road our staff wants to come back with some recommendations to either amend or modify this somehow, that's fine after they've had further discussions. But if this business is already out of compliance, we're not in any position to address that tonight, I don't think. So that's as far as the other issue on the core thing, I'll save my comments on that for later.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. Councilor Beatty, you have a good point, actually. I'm very familiar with the business and with the issues, though, and I'd just like to mention a few things. Have the saw manufacturers not address this and have vacuums on the saws? I mean, do you have dust going everywhere? Or it seems to me that if there was a vacuum for the saw and also an air filter, that could also be part of the answer. I'm just throwing that out there.
The saws used in that setting have dust collection mechanisms to them, and they're required to. And even people working in that environment for OSHA standards are required to be protected from the dust. So even that being said, the operation still produces dust outside of the dust collection system, which is why the fire code has existed the way it has for so long, is because no matter how you try and control the dust, it gets everywhere.
Oh my goodness, from the answer that you've just given, it sounds like there's actually a lot of things in place with the saws and the vacuum, and it's interesting. And I'm not trying to be flippant in any way, but do we have any idea how many fires nationally on a yearly basis are caused by sawdust? I'm just curious.
Not off the top of my head, but I would offer that there's not a lot in the front page of the newspapers because of the codes you have adopted.
Well, you're correct, Councillor Beta. This is actually a pretty complicated issue, and the particular building that we're looking at was a theater, so the ceiling is, 2-3 stories high. In speaking with the owner, apparently there is some type of gas emission that can suppress a fire, and there was interest in using that kind of mitigation. Could you please speak to that? That was a new one for me.
There are alternative extinguishing methods if we go away from the 2,500 square feet and decide to cover it with suppression systems. That's the other option the code allows for. The alternative extinguishing methods from sprinklers, they all have design elements to them of what they can and can't extinguish, and they're UL listed for what they can and can't extinguish. So there has to be a marriage between the extinguishing system and the hazard produced, and that occurs through the manufacturer's documentation and the UL listings for those products.
So handheld fire extinguishers cannot be part of the answer in this situation?
They're part of the requirement, but it'd be pretty tough to put out an explosion with a fire extinguisher.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Gutwein.
Thank you. So first I'll just address the fire conversation, and I agree that this is a topic that we shouldn't hold up the whole process in adopting these the new code. The other thing I just want to say is that I'm going to be very hesitant to expose our firemen and women to unnecessary risk and the exposure to fire and risk of fire. So I think that that's something that, I would want to know considerably more about before I wanted to make a change to that. Then just on a broader topic, tonight has been a really great evening. It feels like the whole evening has been about sustainability, which is very exciting to me. We got to celebrate the Sustainable Neighborhoods program in the beginning. And then, I think that the public commenters said this better than I will, but this is just a really big deal that we're making this update and this change. And I know a tremendous amount of work over years from our staff has gone into this process. So thank you so much for all you do in making this possible. And I'm just really excited about the improvements that we're going to see in water and energy efficiency from this update. And that we went above and beyond the code and came up with some innovative solutions through our sustainability department. So very well done. And just want to briefly say that one reason that efficiency is so important to me is one of my first jobs out of college was I was a field engineer for an oil company, and I stood in places in Bakersfield where, as far as I can see in every direction, is pump jacks. And I think that experience of seeing the impact of our energy usage as a country and as the world really led me to want to work to improve our efficiency as much as we possibly can. And then, of course, I had kids, and I realized, their future is more important to me than anything more important than anything. So this represents just a really important thing. We talked a lot about changes we can make in our own homes and as a neighborhood, but this is an important change that we make as a city. So I just want to thank everyone, and especially staff, for the great work, and everyone who came out tonight. I learned a lot from you. You're awesome. Thank you. And I love that at the end of all of this, we're making these great updates, and then they want to push us further. So I think that's awesome. And I would love to support moving this to the ACIC for further discussion. It sounds like a great idea. So thank you very much.
Councilor Abel.
Can we allow variances in the code, Mr. Graham?
Not as it's currently written.
Could we?
Yeah, I mean, you can write it to accommodate a lot of variances if you wanted to.
Well, our zoning ordinance is written to allow variances, a lot of variances, a few variances, depends on the people who grant the variance, but maybe that's a consideration in these instances where the shoe doesn't seem to fit the foot, but then it may be too much of a concern to
Thank you. Counselor, there are a couple of components in the code that would allow for a variance. We have a Board of Appeals, the same board that reviewed the building code over the last year and a half, could hear an appeal if it was not a life safety issue. It's written into our appeals process that the Board of Appeals can't reduce the life safety requirements of the building code. So that would be problematic in this case. The other thing that the code, there's another provision in the code, kind of a newer provision in the last 3 or 4 adoptions, that allow for performance type enhancements as opposed to strictly prescriptive, which is what we're talking about here. 2,500 square feet, you got a table saw in there, you got to be fire sprinklered. Are there some performance things that can be done that would be equivalent to the fire sprinkler requirement that Bruce, the fire marshal, and the building official could accept, that that would help in this case? Those would have to come from the customer. We can't provide those. A code consultant possibly could do that. In the case of well, that's enough for that, to answer your question.
My concern is that company that has one table saw and 2,500 square feet is not accumulating a lot of dust. It seems they should have some means of adjustment. But
there's actually a standard in the fire code, Bruce, and this is probably your area, but I think there's a standard that a testing standard that can be used to determine whether or not there's a significant amount of dust. I don't know anything about the test, how it's done. I'm sure it costs money, but that's an alternative as well. Is that they have that test done and determine that they don't have enough dust in there to create anything, so that would be part of of the
So
building
if
code.
we adopt this, then there are avenues through which exceptions can be made.
Well, there's avenues now under the current code,
Right.
and those will continue on in this adoption. There's really no change in this provision related to this situation in the code. It's
Okay.
the same as it's been for many, many years.
Thank you.
Counselor Johnson, then Counselor Beta.
Thank you. I'd have to agree with Councillor LeBrew. I think this is really very complicated and not that easy for me to get my arms around either. And I'm not sure if this is a different subject, but another issue that business had mentioned to me, and I'm not sure if it's part of this code, is the need to have a permit to clean an AC that's on the roof. Is that part of what we're dealing with in here? I looked for it and I couldn't find it. I did find it at one point, and I'm not sure if it's in this set of codes, but I have seen that, and that does seem a little bit a stretch to me.
I would agree. That's a maintenance component, and there's no permit required for that.
No permit is required for that.
Not for what you described, no.
As
Cleaning of the
it's
AC.
different information than what I was given, is that you had to have a permit to clean the AC up on the roof, and that just seems goofy to me. So that's not part of this then?
No.
Good, okay, thank you.
Counselor Beta.
Thank you, Mayor. And just so that I don't sound like I'm, not sympathetic to your plight, I mean, we're really glad to have you in Lakewood and glad to have your business, and I hope there's a way to work this thing out. It sounds to me like there's a lot of possibilities and options here. I don't think it's something that we as council can solve tonight. It sounds like, unless anybody else has further discussion on the motion that we have on the floor right now, I would call the question.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to call the question, so please cast your votes. Oh, wait, 1 second, we're missing. Yeah. Yeah, we're voting to call the question, but I'm waiting.
Mayor, while you're waiting, can I fill
Yes,
a moment
ma'am.
of time and ask our city engineer just to address what the role of the Board of Appeals is and the time that they spend reviewing all of the code, and also their technical experience and how they're technically qualified, just to give you a level of comfort that there really is a very full review by one of your committees, and it's a public meeting. So if you're really interested in sitting through those meetings and listening to all of the details that relates to this code, I know that you're welcome to do that. So I'm going to ask Ann Hine just to describe that briefly. That may help inform the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. The Board of Appeals is made up of 7 members who are required to know and understand building construction and building code issues. And in this review, staff presented different parts of the published codes to the Board of Appeals over 5 study sessions in 2017. And the Board of Appeals discussed the base code as well as the amendments that staff was proposing. And they went through a fairly extensive review. They have knowledge of the building codes, and they made recommendations, which we included. And then we moved forward through to the study session and to this adoption. Before the, after the study session and before this meeting, they did meet one last time to review the code in its entirety, and they did pass the resolution recommending your approval. So they are your subject matter experts as well as staff, and they did spend a lot of time in 2017 reviewing the code, the published code, and the amendments that we're proposing in the ordinance.
Yes, certainly. Thank you for that. Councilor Beta.
I would just want to add one thing. I've had an opportunity to review the qualifications of the people on that committee, having sat on the screening committee. I can tell you they are very well qualified. We've got PhDs in engineering on that committee, as well as people with many, many years of construction experience. So we cover the whole gambit from practical side all the way to the theoretical and engineering side. So they're very well qualified. They know what they're doing.
Great. All right. So there's a motion and a second to call the question. Please cast your votes. That passes 9 aye, 1 nay, the nay being Councillor LeBear. And I think other folks wanted to comment about the adoption of this, so we can have that under council comments. Okay, well, so we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes on the passage. Passes 10 ayes, 0 nays. Thank you very much. The other question before us, is there an appetite to send some of the recommendations to ACIC for a project assignment? Okay, so we will do that. And I think we have a nice diagram of where to start. So thank you. A lot of good information. But if you do have those handouts, could you please drop those off at the clerk, and we can make sure that as she develops, she develops the assignment, that we have all that in place. So thank you all very much, and I'm sure you'll have some more comments after. Mr. Sizemore, thank you, and to our Board of Appeals, thank you. All right, will the clerk please read item 17?
Item 17, Ordinance O 2018-8, vacating a portion of the West Baltic Drive right-of-way located east of South McIntyre Street, Lakewood, Colorado.
Okay. I would ask for a motion.
I move for the adoption of Ordinance O 2018-8 on second and final reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, please cast your votes. Passes 10 ayes, 0 nay. Will the clerk please read item 18?
Item 18, Ordinance O 2018-9, authorizing a real estate exchange agreement with the Regional Transportation District to address land ownership along the RTD Light Rail W line and vacating certain city right-of-way at Quail Street and 13th Avenue.
All right, so for this, there has been a request from staff to pull this agenda item for further discussion amongst staff and the parties involved. So, Mr. Mueller, you requested a chance to speak. Okay. So I will close public comment, and we will have a unique motion.
I move that the public hearing on second reading of Ordinance O 2018-9 be postponed indefinitely to allow for further communication between RTD and the City of Lakewood, at which time staff will renotice the public hearing and place the second reading of Ordinance O 2018-9 on the agenda for an upcoming regular City Council meeting.
Second.
All right, motion and a second. Any discussion? Questions? All right, please cast your votes. That passes 10 aye, 0 nay. Under general business, we will reintroduce item 9, Madam Clerk.
Item 9, Resolution 2018-32, creating a City Council Advisory Ad Hoc Committee regarding the development dialogue.
Councillor Beta.
Thank you, Mayor. I think this will just take a moment. My understanding when we were discussing this committee that it was a drafting and development committee. I noticed that the drafting part is left out. I think that's important because I think the intent was that this committee is going to be bringing back some specific proposals for legislation. So I'd like to add that to the title of this. It's a committee for drafting and development. And then the second part I want to bring up is under section 1 of the resolution. The very last phrase after zoning ordinance, it says, as recommended to the committee by the Planning Commission. Let me read the whole sentence. The purpose of the committee is to make recommendations to the full city council regarding possible amendments to the zoning ordinance as recommended to the committee by the Planning Commission. I have an objection to that last phrase, as recommended by the Planning Commission. I do not think that this body or the members of this body should be constrained to proposing legislation that has only been proposed by the Planning Commission. So I would ask that that phrase be stricken.
Okay. So,
I'll second that.
okay, could you wait for a second till we get some clarification, please? So could you re-clarify your first statement?
My first statement?
So you said where are you going to insert drafting?
Well, on the subject, we start the first place that it talks about the name of the ad hoc committee. It says for development dialogue. It should be for drafting development dialogue, for drafting and development. So it's in my understanding that we're going to be doing drafting.
Sure. I'm sorry. I'm just trying. I mean, it makes sense. I'm just trying to find.
Okay.
Are you in the whereases?
On the request for council action, I guess we don't need it there. We really need.
No, it would be in the body.
All right, so let me go through it here.
So if you could withdraw your second, please. Councilor Johnson, could you withdraw your second, please?
Withdrawn.
Thank you.
But this development dialogue isn't the drafting. This is specific to development. The drafting one was specific to all legislation. Isn't there another? This is drafting.
So I'm gonna, if I might, I am gonna ask Councilor Skilling. This is his proposal. So wherever we can work in that question in the actual resolution, creating a.
It would be in the second whereas. And it says develop red line changes for council's consideration and adoption. So we can add after the last comma. Propose amendments to the zoning code, review staff and planning commission recommendations, draft and develop red line changes for council's consideration.
Councilor Beta, is that acceptable?
Well, okay, let me ask this. So if you're saying draft and develop red line changes, that would be to existing ordinances, correct?
The existing ordinances, correct.
Would that limit us if we wanted to add something new? I mean, it doesn't have to be redline. If we want to add a new paragraph or a new section, redlining, does adding redlining encompass that in your?
I would say draft and /or.
Okay, then that's
redline. So
yeah, then I'm good with it. And I also just want to point out, make sure, because I know in the original resolution it had the members on there from Ward 3 is Pete Roybal and Barb Franks. And I know I saw a message that it had been changed. I just want to make sure that the members have been changed for Ward 3 to myself, and Ward 4 was Councilman Skilling.
The new version was Margie published the new version on the Lakewood home on the website, and you actually have to click on it. It's outside of the packet, so you got to go outside the packet, click, and it comes back in.
And I would say we have Planning Commission there, but the reason why we have as recommended to the committee by Planning Commission is because they're bringing forth all of their input, and so that's coming from them. It doesn't limit us to theirs, but that's why we're creating this, because they're the body by statute that reviews and is recommending. Doesn't mean this group has to take any of it or adopt it, but that's where it's coming from.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm okay with that. I just don't want to be limited by that. And the way that, to my way of reading it, could be read to mean we're limited to their recommendations, and I don't want that.
Well, let me give it a shot. If you say Section 2, The purpose of the committee is to make recommendations to the entire city council regarding possible amendments to the zoning code, including but not limited to recommendations to the committee by the planning commission.
Okay. I can live with that. Of course, that's section 1, though, isn't it?
It's section 2.
It hits section 2, Counselor. It starts out as section 1, but it's section 2 is in the paragraph. Yes, sir.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. All right. So if we're okay with that, then Counselor Johnson, make your second, please.
Second.
All right. So, Madam Clerk, are you clear on our amended language?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Counselor Harrison.
Thank you. The only thing that I want to make sure that Planning Commission members understand that I don't believe the focus of this motion is to replace or undo any of their work. It is just to give us, City Council, the ability to take their recommendations as well as what we feel might be important. It's very, very important that we're thankful that the Planning Commission is there, that they have a lot of really great expertise that we need to respect, but that we are also the elected and might need to make some decisions. So, thank you.
Councilor Skilling.
And to that point, I actually reached out to the Planning Commission chair, to Mr. Hollander, in a discussion we were having, and made it a point to invite him anytime, and actually wanted him included in any of these discussions because he knows the Planning Commission. They've got collective experience. We want everyone there. I mean, we want staff there. We certainly want legal there. Mr. Graham, anytime. We want everybody included in it. Nobody, I mean, that's the whole point of this. So to that point, we have done that.
Well done. Okay, I'll take a motion, please. As amended.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2018-32 as amended on final reading.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Well done. Please cast your votes. Okay, that passes 10 ayes, 0 nays. Okay, so I'll now go to Counselor Abel, who has a council request. Request for
The
council.
request for council action is not on the agenda.
So it was moved last week.
And it is.
So then there was an update sent this week by the clerk with the changes to number 9, as well as an indication.
It should be on your revised agenda. It was added after the agenda was published.
And we publicly made note of that at our previous meeting.
Oh, I understand. I'll just launch into it then. Because of recent, a vote in a recent sidewalk issue dealing with the Sheridan Corridor sidewalk, a number of council people spoke their opposition to eminent domain action. It would seem that if those members are true to their word, there are not enough votes for eminent domain on the D10 bicycle path along the north side of the railroad tracks from Kipling to Oak Street. The effect of no eminent domain could spell serious problems for the project. So I propose legislation that would declare a pause on planning and other staff work on the project known as the D10 bike path, as well as a moratorium on spending further funds on the project. Council would further ask staff to reevaluate alternative routes, including a Kipling to Oak Street alignment of the path along the south side of West 13th Avenue. Unlike the current plan, such a reevaluation would take into account the opportunity to avoid any takings of property by routing a small portion of the path onto the current West 13th Avenue bicycle lane to skirt 3 properties, crossing in front of 3 driveways only. Then it would cut back on Nelson Street to the southern portion of RTD's right-of-way all the way through to Oak Street. This would give us a chance to examine the opportunity to transfer a Denver Regional Council of Governments grant to fund the West 13th Avenue route, as well as estimations of possible cost savings due to better access for construction of the route along the more accessible West 13th Avenue. Would also seem to provide better improved access for maintenance and less shading of the snow and ice that would accumulate on the north side of the path. In addition, spiraling cost estimates of the mitigation work for restoring the historic irrigation water delivery of ditch water should be addressed in the results presented to council. In providing estimates of the possible costs, the savings from the absence of property acquisitions, probable avoidance of the huge extents of restoring that historic ditch flow, and the expected legal and engineering costs associated with the irrigation challenges also should be calculated and presented to council as part of the entire cost picture. So my proposal is that we reevaluate this route and the problems that have cropped up in the last year and a half since the 13th Avenue route was originally proposed and D10 was approved on the north side of the tracks. There you have it.
Do you have a recommended path on how you would want to see the council, like what action would you be recommending?
Well, I'm recommending that staff give a thorough evaluation of the costs associated with locating the path along West 13th Avenue as opposed to the current proposal along the north side of the tracks, taking property from folks who live on West 13th Place. I think we can do it without any takings at all. I have some photos from earlier today, but this may not be the forum for that kind of presentation. But I think we should take a look at it, have a future study session, and reconsider the project.
Okay, so I'm hearing a couple different things. So that's certainly a study session, and I think it's worth an update from staff as to where we are currently, because the direction and the goal was to mitigate any sort of takings, and I know that your group has been working very hard to try to work with the affected stakeholders to potentially realize that.
I might add that the removal of item 18 from tonight's discussion illustrates the large changes that have been made in the outlook for the path. The RTD land swap agreement would, according to the ditch companies, leave us with the legal liability of restoring a ditch flow that was apparently altered by RTD in years past. So that cost alone could be enormous.
Sure. So, Ms. Hodson?
Yes, that's accurate, that staff has been working with the property owners along this line. And there's been at least one change in ownership, which has just created some more work, frankly, from working with different property owners. I would ask our Public Works Director, who I know is here, to give a brief update on what that work has been to date. And if you're interested in a study session to update the folks who weren't here during some of those conversations, and then to look at the different options, we're happy to do that as well. But before that, I would ask Jay Hutchison to come forward and give just a brief update in terms of the work that's been done to date. Thank you.
What about the Zephyr portion that would be directly impacted by this also?
So the question is, the Zephyr portion is also a part of this, which would be in Ward 2, because, so that would be Councilor Vincent's.
A little bit of overview and a little bit of an update then, perhaps. Jay Hutchison, Director of Public Works. First, the overview. There are two segments of the proposed W-line path or D10 path. Both terminologies mean the same thing. Generally along the W-line across the communities. The segment that is the main topic this evening is the piece from Oak to Kipling, as Councilor Abel mentioned. There's also a segment from Zephyr to Wadsworth. And the reason they're often talked about together is that there's a single grant that is applicable to both. They aren't two separate grants. So we look at the whole picture. There are a couple of other segments of the W-line path that were added to the budget last fall, but I don't think they have any relevance to this discussion at all, so I won't go into those. As for an update, there are a lot of things that have been going on over a fair amount of time, and it is complex, as these projects typically are on retrofits. And it does include work with adjacent property owners. And that includes the ones where acquisitions might be necessary and where there may not be acquisitions necessary, but will be right next to their property. And we're talking about fences, and some of those are old and decrepit, and should those be replaced, those kinds of things. Part of that discussion with some of those owners is irrigation water that they have rights to that come from the White Lateral, which runs along generally the space between the W line and the property owners on 13th Place. That discussion also includes the board of the White Lateral, which was affected, just as Councilor Abel described it, by the RTD project. And there have been, I wish I could remember exactly what year it was that the W line opened, but since before that time, since during construction of the W line, there have been ongoing discussions between those two parties, and our hope is that if the project goes forward, we can help make some of that better, and I think we've put that on the table before. But those aren't resolved. We've worked with those folks on the line, the east-west line. We've worked with them on a major diversion box that supplies water from the White Lateral to the Lakewood Heights Lateral, which then involves a second board. And there are individual property owners, not all along that route, but some along that route that have water rights that pull water directly out of the White Lateral, and they have a structure in the same area, so we've been working with them too on the design. While design proposals have been developed, we hired the city hired a water engineer that works on irrigation ditches and these kinds of structures. We've provided some proposals. We haven't concluded those discussions. All of these discussions are a bit interrelated. So a number of things are underway, and all eventually are intended to fit together, but they aren't concluded because they do interrelate. Hope that's helpful. Thank you.
Yes, Ish. Councilor Vincent.
I just wanted to make sure, I didn't know how the Zephyr project related to this, and I wanted to make sure we didn't lose that piece of it when we're talking about the whole D10.
I'll respond to that.
Sure.
The Zephyr to Kipling route is not at all affected by this. This is only Kipling to Oak Street that would be involved in the review I'm asking for and the request for council action.
And that's fine. I know the grant, though, and this whole project has the Zephyr to Wadsworth sidewalk piece of it also. connected with it. So if we do one, I didn't know how it would impact the other. That was my concern.
So essentially they are tied together because of the grant funding. Or are they not?
Thank you, Jay Hutchison again. To fulfill the requirements of the grant would, as things stand today, would require construction of both pieces. So while the design aspects, I don't think, of the piece from Zephyr to Wadsworth are a concern under the proposal Mr. Abel has made, he has also indicated we need to look at the grant. And that's one part of looking at the grant is, does it affect Zephyr to Wadsworth? And as Mr. Abel said, we'll also have to look at, does it change or does it affect 13th Avenue versus 13th Place? But it's identified in the in what Mr. Abel read as an item to be looked at.
Councilor Goodwin.
So I apologize because I'm not sure that I understood the answers to some of these questions. So I'm basically going to re-ask some of these questions. But so as it stands, though, basically the grant would be impacted from Zephyr to Wadsworth if we were to change the other piece of the D10.
We have talked to the Denver Regional Council of Governments, which provided the grant some months back, and their indication is that the grant is for a project that's been defined, and that's both the piece from Zephyr to Wadsworth and Oak to Kipling, and in the locations where the grant defines those. So it is a potential issue that I guess on the extreme end, the grant funds would go back to the Denver Regional Council of Governments.
Okay, thank you. And then, I think that at the heart of this issue, and I really appreciate the concern from members of council about eminent domain, and this is one of the most serious decisions that our body can make. So I want to understand where the negotiations are at this point. There's been change in ownership? Is it possible that we might get to a point where we don't need to do eminent domain to complete the D10 as is?
Yes, but I want to explain my answer a bit because it is. I think it's possible. There are multiple property owners that we need to work out issues with. So is it a guarantee? No, I can't guarantee that we can get there without eminent domain. And each of those circumstances is different. In some cases we have water to deal with, in some cases we have land to deal with, in some cases it's acquisition of a portion of a yard permanently, in other cases it's a temporary construction easement. There's a lot of different conditions and different perspectives from different owners. So whether it's this project or any other, your staff tries to do the same thing that you're talking about right now, which is to minimize or eliminate the need to buy people's property, particularly if they're not interested in selling. So we work on the design and continue to try to adjust and find ways to reduce the effects and see if we can reach an agreement or shift the effects or do something that is fair and helps everybody reach an agreement. As does the property management group when they actually come out and make offers to purchase property. They do the same kind of thing. And I think you've heard statistics from Mr. Dorr and Mr. Stanchu about how successful they are at doing that. But so I'm optimistic. But I can't make a guarantee. Is that fair?
That's very fair. Thank you. So things that you're working on to get there include, from what you were just saying, adjustments to the design. So that would mean changing the design so that it's not requiring takings. That's one of the things that you're looking at. And then working with the owners to work out some of the other issues like the water and stuff like that. So are there other things that you're doing to help us get there?
Yeah, fencing is also an area that we're looking at. Each owner has their own fence along their back property line, and some of those are newer, some of those are older. We don't necessarily have to touch every fence, but we're talking to every owner about their fence because the conditions behind the fence, behind the backyard, will be different than they are today because there will be a path and people using the path. So we're having discussions with each of the owners and have talked about fence heights. The Public Works Department applied for, and the Planning Department already processed a variance for fence heights that can be done administratively for essentially all those properties. And so that's another area that we're working with the owners on.
Great. Just a couple more. So tell me about the RTD right away, and so what is the implication of that being pulled? Is
the RTD right-of-way question is much broader than this area from Oak to Kipling. It's the entire W line corridor through the city of Lakewood. As you may remember that the corridor started by RTD many years before building the light rail, purchased what was called the Associated Railway right-of-way. So they purchased a corridor of land across Lakewood. That was long before there was a fast tracks program, long before anybody was trying to design anything. It was an opportunity that RTD saw for the future. So then when the design for fast tracks occurred, in the W line specifically, they had to figure out how much space do they need. In some cases, they needed to buy land. In other cases, they're ending up with land that they don't really have any use for or any need for. And there was a long negotiation process that included the Finance Department and Public Works and RTD and their land people to figure out, so here's a piece of land that's not within the rail corridor, narrowly defined. Does it make sense for RTD to keep that? Does it make sense for the city to take that? And so piece by piece, that process has gone forward. That's the broader picture. Within the Oak to Kipling area, there is land outside of the rail line, north of their north fence, that is also south of the private property owner's fence. So there's a strip of land between what RTD functions in and what the private property owners own. And across most of that, there's enough space to build the path, but not all of it. There's 2 properties west of Nelson and 4, I think, and don't quote me, but I think that's right. I think 4 between Nelson and Kipling where some acquisition has to occur based on the early cut of how the design would go. And we think we're going to still be in that range, but the amount of land varies and is relatively small in those 4. So if the land transfers, if you had proceeded with that action tonight, then one of the things that would have occurred is the city would have stepped into RTD's shoes in the agreement between RTD and the White Lateral. So any residual obligation of RTD related to the White Lateral would have become the city's obligation. Without going deep into negotiations, which this probably isn't the right forum to talk about negotiations in detail, we were hopeful, and still are, that we can do some things that will help the White Lateral. And it's frankly easier to do if RTD is not in the mix. If they own the land, they're still in the mix. So if this project goes forward, it may still make sense to do the deal, even though Lakewood would step into those shoes. That was a very long answer. I apologize. I hope it's helpful.
No, that's okay. Thanks. So it doesn't mean that this project is impacted because we pulled that.
Not necessarily. My suspicion is that item will come back to you because it deals with much more than just this Kipling to Oak corridor. So my expectation is that you would eventually make a decision on that. And if for some reason this Kipling to Oak piece came out of that agreement, then it would probably just mean that Lakewood would need to also reach an agreement with RTD to use RTD's land for the path.
Okay, great. Thank you. Last question. The route that is being proposed to examine, will you refresh my memory? was that one of the routes that we looked at back when we did this original debate? One of the alternate routes?
Yeah, there were I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6 alternates, and I believe so, if I understand the routing correctly. Yes.
Okay. And do you want comments now, or are we just doing questions? Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Hutchison, when do you anticipate a time frame as to knowing, especially the private property part?
This year. I mean, our hope is that we can get through that process, the Colorado Department of Transportation's review of that process, the Colorado Department of Transportation's review of the design and construction plans, and get this thing under construction later this year.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. Well, obviously, I support what Councilor Abel's doing. We sat down and put together language for this. I have a couple comments. Number one, for me, the process on this has been flawed since day one. The first time that I heard about it was in the backyard of one of the neighbors, and they wondered what was going on because they had surveyors in their backyard. Do you recall that? Yeah. Nobody knew what was happening, and it had already been initiated. A couple weeks ago, I gave all of you 4 letters, 2 of them signed by RTD and 2 of them signed by the city, saying that the land that we're talking about would never be used for public use. So please, if you still have them, read them. I think that's important to know that these homeowners have been given promises. It's more than just putting the path on the north side of the light rail. There's noise pollution, there are safety issues, there's light pollution, and putting it on the north side creates a tunnel. So it makes people wonder that live in those homes, what happens if somebody's stuck back there, and how are they going to get emergency services to them? I'm concerned that when we first applied for this fund, for the federal funding, it was for land that we didn't even own. Obviously, it's RTD. And we were applying for a federal fund for something that we don't even own. I do have a question. I'd like to know how much of the grant money has been spent so far on the D10 portion. I realize that there's 2 different projects in play, but it just seems so straightforward to me that if we go with what Councilor Abel had proposed a year and a half ago to use the route on the south side on 13th Avenue and don't need to use eminent domain, why don't we just do that? Part of the issue here is that these homeowners, when the light rail came through, eminent domain was already used to take portions of their backyards. And in one case, one lady, help me out, Charlie, she lost, 4 fully grown cottonwood trees?
I believe so.
Yeah. And now they're being asked to have more of their land taken for a bike path. And I've said it before, and I will say it again, but I want to be quoted accurately because the bike lobby has misquoted me. For me, it is morally wrong to use eminent domain when you're taking somebody's private land for a bike path. I did not say it is morally wrong for a bike path, but to use eminent domain to take backyards for it. And I want to be quoted accurately when the bike path hears this again, or the bike coalition and lobbyists. I'd like to know how much of the federal funding has already been used on the D10 portion. Do we know that?
So I'm gonna try to keep us to what we want to do with this proposal. if we want to have an update on everything, then let's give staff time to prepare an update. I will say nobody's property was taken, no private property was taken on that stretch by RTD for the W line. Is that accurate? No property was taken by RTD on that stretch for the light rail. So we want to make sure that we have a factual conversation as we move forward and understand. We also need to understand that there are some property owners who want to see this and who are working to create access so they can have their backyard open to it. So let's stick to Councilor Abel's request, which I guess what you had said is a study session. If we want to reopen, there was eminent domain involved in that suggestion because you have to put the bike path through front yards. So the question is, I think we need to then, if you're going to stop the whole process, we have a resolution that created this process. That would be one step of changing that resolution. And the second would be a study session to get up to speed on everything that's taken place. Ms. Harrison.
Thank you. Two things. First of all, it's been a while since we've discussed all of this, and I would since this is not my ward, I would really like maybe to have an overall review of everything, because I honestly don't remember all of the specifics and feel like I would have to get up to date on that. So if we could do that, that would be great. And if we're going to look at specifics, the other thing that I would love is, because of the fact that I drive up and down Kipling all the time and I watch bicyclists try to maneuver that corner, I am right under the W line. I am scared to death that one of these days we're going to have somebody come off of that, and probably it's going to be a kid. And I'll tell you, we're all going to be feeling really bad. So if I don't know how we can create our design to make that corner safer. I don't know what that means, but please, because you make me nervous every single time I go by there. Thank you.
Councilor Abel.
A couple of things. What I'm asking for includes looking at the cost of construction on the more accessible southern side of the railroad tracks. I know darn well it costs a lot more to haul a wheelbarrow full of concrete down that tunnel all the way down on the north side of that track than it would on the south side of that track, where you can just pull the wheelbarrow right up to the site and dump it out. So there's cost savings to be had there. That, along with the expense of relocating or restoring the historic ditch flow, could override the benefit of the grant that has been offered. So we need comparative figures. Did we look at this route before? No, we mentioned this route before, but we did not look at it. We didn't have any cost estimates. It is not true that you'll have to take property on the south side. You can bring it. In fact, we own a piece of property already there. It's for park and open space use. It's one of those tiny developer lots, but developer fee lots. But that gives us a leg up too. But we do not have to take any property on this route. Did we look at it before? No. We saw a picture, we saw a map with some red lines on it, but did we take a look at the cost estimate of it? No. The discussion that night completely ignored the fact that we had no estimates on what the cost of that route might be. It was a rather the presentation was weighted to the north side. So I think we need a longer look at it. I think we need to look at the new figures for what the irrigation ditch work might cost us and the engineering for that. Some of these people have already lost some of their backyards. I don't know whether it was taken by eminent domain or not, but they lost property from their backyards. Half a dozen. We sat in the backyard of some folks who suffered that loss. So what I want is a fresh look at this, fresh figures, and based on the most recent development.
And just the other reason, not reason, but the other presentation that past council, one of the reasons about the route that it was not considered was because of the requirements of the grant, right, wrong, or indifferent, that it had to be detached. And that route didn't allow for that. So there were issues around that. So to come to a consensus, you would like to have an update and have a study session to discuss this as a whole.
Right, with the outlook being a probable ordinance that would change the route. I don't want just a study session.
Okay. So
I've asked for a request for council action on an ordinance.
On an ordinance, okay.
That would include a study session.
Okay, so is there consensus to go forth with that proposal? So let's see, 1, 2. Do I have 6? So I mean, okay, if you'd like to have comments, Ms. Gutwein.
Sorry, yeah, I would like to have comments. I think that, there were a number of reasons that we ended up supporting this proposal, and we had significant public input from our neighbors who ride bikes. And I just have to say that I had a number of people reach out to me that were very offended by being called a bike lobby, implying that these are like this big special interest that's, influencing Lakewood. These are our neighbors who ride bikes, and they have given their time to make Lakewood a more bike-friendly place. They've spent a considerable amount of time and energy to that end. And so I think it would be really inappropriate for me to call people like neighbors the neighbor lobby, because these are just our neighbors. So that aside, so anyway, we had this really long debate and discussion about this, and it's a difficult topic, and I think that I really appreciate the philosophical opposition to using eminent domain. And we're not at that point yet. Right now we're making progress. It's still possible that we may not have to use eminent domain. And that will come back to council to make that final decision. We are not, by continuing and making this effort to get the safest route possible. This is without question the safest route possible. Having a detached bike lane is much safer than having a shared bike path. That's just a fact. So it's the safest. It's what our community, significant number of our community wanted to see. It's the grant, and so I think that what we should do is continue along, see if we can get there, see if we can do this without doing eminent domain. Then if we get to the point where, we don't reach an agreement, we can't make the adjustments, we can't reach a deal on the fencing and all of those other moving parts, then, the council can vote no on eminent domain. And we can go from there and examine alternative routes. So yeah, that's why I will not be reopening this discussion that we've already spent a considerable amount of time on. Thank you.
So I would certainly support the study session part and understanding more at that point as to what's going on. I think it's our job to look ahead, and when you look at completing paths, this is that opportunity that will be generational. That'll be something that'll be there. You're adding multifamily, you're adding different densities to the west and north of that. That is going to connect an elementary school. So I think there's a lot of good possibilities, but I also understand the eminent domain part. So my goal would be to support the continuation of staff trying to make this a reality. And I can tell you, I had the opportunity to meet with some of those neighbors, and we've had challenging conversations, and we've heard how there's been some concerns, but I think we've made some movement, and I have great hope that this can get done in that way. So I certainly wouldn't want to at this point, without knowing after we've come all this way, if it's not doable, to just turn it in. I think that would be a failure, I think, in the long run as leaders in our community. Mr. Skilling.
I think that if we're to Councilor Gutwein's point, we could get to the end of this, and for whatever reason, whether it's the eminent domain issue, whether it's funding, who knows what the issue is, we get to the end of it, and then if it doesn't work, then we'd have to find some other alternative. And that, I think we can accomplish all the goals here by having a study session which provides an update, gives some more context to the new people up here. I think we'd mentioned this vote happened a while back. A lot has happened. There was some questions that were just posed to Mr. Hutchinson. I would be interested to know those answers. How much has been spent on the grant? How are we doing on costs? I mean, is the budget still intact? I think there's a lot to talk about in a study session. I don't think that Councilor Abel is suggesting right now that we're scrapping everything. In fact, his request says, let's have a study session and look at some of these other alternatives. While that's all happening, we're still moving forward with what the adopted ordinance is, which is we're moving forward with the D10 as it was adopted. That's how I understand it. If at the study session council decides something else, was a consensus to move in some direction, then we can have those debates. But I think it's worthy of having a study session for sure. If for no other reason, just to have an update on where we are with things and to address some of the concerns that we're hearing. So I would favor that. I don't know why we wouldn't have that study session, other than time, of course.
So for clarification, though, the request was to have a study session with a proposed ordinance to change.
With a consideration of a proposed ordinance. And while we're putting words in people's mouths, I would appreciate it if I was not accused of calling people a bike lobby.
I don't think anybody was.
That is, someone just did.
Point of order.
Someone
Point of order, please.
Settle down, Mayor. I
order.
will not be falsely accused.
There was no
There was an
accusation
implication
made.
of that.
Okay. So, Councilor Franks.
Well, Councilor Skilling took most of my thunder, but really what I wanted to say is this just makes sense. We have to do some contingency planning. We don't want to get to the end of the road. I voted in the past for this. The other line did have takings as well. It just had few, but those properties were more significantly impacted. But I think it is appropriate. I think it's appropriate to get an update. I think it's appropriate to understand. I would like to eventually come to the conclusion of whether those property owners actually did have takings. I know we've bandied that around a few times. I want to know whether they did or did not have takings. That factors in, and it's just a factual thing, but I think it makes sense. I really want to continue to see if we can get to a good solution there. But if we can't, let's do this study session, have the contingency, understand the financing and those pieces. But ultimately, what we're trying to do here is build in connectivity that's a safe path. And I just think that I want to continue forth. And so again, with Councilor Skilling, but let's look at that contingency, because eminent domain is serious, and it depends on the number of people that would be impacted by that.
Thank you. Councilor Roybal, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. After hearing the conversation, after looking at this and studying it for months and months and months, Staff did get direction to move forward. What I would maybe suggest is that we're having more conversations here. Why can't we put everything at a freeze, stop everything, and then continue having the study session until we make our final decision? I'd like to show a little respect to staff, because originally if they're told to go ahead and move forward and then all of a sudden council changes their mind, what's going to happen to staff? They're going to say, council changed their mind again. What are we going to do now? So instead of going back and forth with staff, why can't we just do a temporary freeze or a timeout till, council makes a decision?
Councilor Vincent.
I think it's because staff is continuing to work on it. If we get to a situation where we get an update and we don't have eminent domain, I would not like to stop the progress as we move forward, because then I don't know, I hate to say this, I don't know what I don't know. I would have nothing to compare it to. We would have D10 at a certain point, I think, and then look at the alternative. But if everything stops, I don't know where we are in the D10, nor do I really know where the cost is or anything else.
But what if we change our mind in the middle of the stream and we say we want to do something else?
I need the information, though, to make that decision.
Well, can't we stop temporarily?
No, because I need the information that I want to get from a study session so that I can make a decision.
Point of order, Mayor. 15 minutes ago, we reached consensus.
So, continue, please.
I'm all in favor of a study session, but I'm not in favor of freezing everything at this point.
Councilor Harrison.
Thank you. I would just want to make it sure that in the definition of takings, I know Barb had just asked about that. Takings needs to be defined as whether that's eminent domain takings or did people choose to sell their land. That would be different, because that's a different definition. And I think that's something that would, because I don't believe there were very many, and I'll use the word eminent domain, pieces of property that were involved. I think a lot of people chose to sell their land based on the offers that were given to them.
So I have Councilors Abel, Johnson, and Gutwein.
I just wanted to raise a point of order. We reached consensus some time ago.
There was a question of
clarification
by two council members when we were asking this.
We reached consensus.
Okay. Councilor Johnson?
I think that's a fair point, Karen. But I do want to go on record that I am not against biking and I am not against bike paths. I have real issue with this particular segment. That's the point I have. Thank you.
Councilor Gutwein.
So just one more question for you, Jay. So when you're dealing with a major piece of infrastructure like this, is it typical to, what is the best practice in accomplishing this and us achieving our fiduciary responsibility of getting this done in an effective, cost-efficient way? So my question is, if we approve as a body a specific path or a road or a ditch or a bike lane, and then there's always going to be issues that come up. It could be that you don't, it may be subject to a takings like it is in this case. I can imagine that there's other issues, but I am having a hard time understanding that the best way to do this is we pick one way, and then at the same time I guess, is that the typical way to do it? You approve a highway or you approve building Wadsworth, and then you also explore alternative routes alongside at the same time in case something falls through? Or do you just try to build it, and then if it doesn't work, then you explore other options. Does that make sense? It's late.
There are a variety of processes that could be used. Generally, it's an iterative process that requires general decisions that ultimately get down to very specific decisions. So, using any kind of a transportation project, it's often the case that there will be a discussion about what are the goals, what are we trying to accomplish, what are the alternatives that might accomplish that, comparing those alternatives, usually selecting one at some point in a process of comparison, and then implementing that alternative. Is it possible that during the implementation phase, the last step, things might change? Yes. And it might change in small ways. It could change in big ways. There are, you could probably, without too much effort, find partly completed transportation projects around the country that were stopped and eventually things were torn out. So it's not unheard of to change direction even in the later stages. It's more efficient not to, but not every project carries maximum efficiency. They usually aren't straightforward.
Okay, thank you. So again, I guess I just feel like we've already made the large decisions based on safety and completing the path. This has all been said before. So then my last question is that can we take a vote on this so that it is on record how people vote? Because I know the community will be interested to see that.
Before we go, I mean, I think that there's a consensus on things to move forward, and we'll get to that direction. We need to have good direction for staff. Ms. Hodson, I'm looking at the schedule, and that's another part of this, as to what you think the anticipated amount of time would be to be prepared and to have a study session.
I really need to visit with staff about how to put that information together, especially since there's a request for kind of deeper information, looking at the financial pieces as relates to another alternative. I think I'm looking at July. Potentially, there's an opportunity, maybe August 6th. That's a study session that looks like there may be a pretty light agenda. That may be an option if you'll allow me to have time to visit with staff, and then I can get back to you, but we'll do it as quickly as we can.
Councilor Franks.
The point I just would like to bring up is that we know that there is major concerns about eminent domain, but letting our staff continue to try to work through that and keeping us moving forward. We've always had that tool, in the tool belt where we can stop this and not go that far. But at this point, I want the additional information. I want to give staff time to do that, but I also want to see if we can get to the finish line. Having a contingency plan, though, knowing that many of us do not have a strong appetite for eminent domain, but also have to look again visionary. It just seems to me we can put a period at the end of this and say, yes, let's let staff keep working on what they're doing. Let's, in tandem, get this additional study session going where we're all going to be educated, because some new information has come to light, which could change the cost projections and change other things. So it's not too late at this point to also look at that. Seems like we can get there quickly and just continue to move forward, no freeze, move forward, and then start looking at the additional information. So we have a contingency plan should one be needed if eminent domain comes into play. Just seems a logical next step, and we don't need to keep beating this. I'm sorry, getting a little late, and just want to keep these conversations relevant.
Councilor Harrison.
Ditto.
Okay. Am I seeing consensus on that statement that Councilor Franks just made? Okay. Thank you. Ms. Hodson, executive report. My apologies, I failed to mention that at our last meeting.
Thank you. I do have a couple of items. The first is we had an individual approach the city, and he has a real passion and a real interest in supporting our law enforcement, our police department. And he wanted to do that with his personal funds and through donations. As I said, he has a real genuine passion for the men and women who support our community. So he, from his personal dollars, he and a few of his other individuals donated $8,800 to be used specifically for ballistic helmets in our police department. The helmets, each one costs about $300. And because of budget limitations, only our SWAT team used those helmets. So because of these individuals who just care about your police department, we're able to purchase many more ballistic helmets. And these helmets provide increased protection due to the increased violence against police. So I just wanted to recognize that. That's one of those just really feel-good things that we stumble across once in a while. Also, from the sustainability perspective, I'd like to give you an update and let you know that we will be commencing with a community conversation on residential trash collection. We'll be doing that this summer. We'll be spending the summer collecting community input on residential trash collection. Here's really the three-pronged intent, and that is to understand residents' opinions about Lakewood's current residential trash collection, collect ideas if and how the system could be reviewed or improved, and finally provide that information to you. A summary of the community concerns. We'll be doing that in some kind of unusual ways. Look for the roundtable minivan and pop-up tent this summer at markets, concerts, softball games, parks, libraries, etc. This information can be found on the main page, lakewoodtogether.org, where residents can learn about the current system, share their opinions, share ideas and suggestions, ask questions, and have a live chat with staff on Thursdays during online open office hours, noon to 3. So more information on that. Last week you asked us to really think about how we can broaden the net as it relates to communicating about a potential debrucing effort on the ballot. And the big news is that we're in the process of building out a dedicated page on the Lakewood Together site. It's not quite ready to launch, but it will be soon, later this week or early next week. So you can look forward to that. And when that's ready, there'll be a citizen poll. We're going to have a bunch of information. And then we'll have, like I'd said before, we'll have some hard copy information that you can distribute to your constituents. And finally, we are going to test drive a new system. At my review a couple of weeks ago, we talked about how can we better frame up a conversation, a community conversation that's coming, or a presentation that you'll be getting. We've always called those RFCAs, which are requests for council action. And starting 2 weeks from now, we're going to move to a more tailored council staff report. And it's going to have the information that we talked about. Of course, I just lost it. Pardon me. So here's what we're going to do. And again, we're test driving it. We're going to have a summary statement. We're going to provide background information. We're going to include financial impacts. We'll have staff recommendations and alternatives. We'll talk about public outreach, next steps, and attachments. And then again, we'll have the review. The idea here is we're just going to launch this and see how you like it. It'll have more detailed information than what you're used to with the RFCA. But we want you to try it. Then what I'd like to offer is to have a workshop before a meeting so that you can give me that feedback and you can make modifications and changes, and we can talk more about how to make sure our meetings and the staff presentation side of our meetings are as effective and efficient as possible. So we're working toward that. I had a really good conversation with Councilor Beta recently, and he also agreed with this idea of having a city council conversation. And so we'll start with this test drive. Let us know how you like it, or if it makes sense to you. It'll be at the meeting on the 25th, which is 2 weeks from today. But I didn't want you to be surprised and say, what the heck am I looking at? So that's what you're going to get. So thank you.
Good stuff. Many thanks. That's awesome. Mayor Pro Tem Roybal.
No report.
Okay. So I'll go to my left, Councilor LeBaire.
Thank you, Miss Hudson, for that info. I know it's getting late. I'm starting to say your name wrong. Yeah, that sounds great. I am looking forward to hearing more options and ideas whenever we get some policy suggestions. I want to mention that to some of our neighbors who are wanting to see some Saturday meetings with Councilor Vincent and I. We finally worked out a location, so hopefully perhaps maybe next month we'll have our first Saturday meeting. I think some of our neighbors are getting jealous of our Ward 4 folks, and I think Ward 3, maybe 1, all of them, I don't know. So we're working on that. Hopefully next month we'll have that. I just want to mention the building code thing, since we just had a discussion about that. I just want to mention that I appreciate the experts who worked on all of that. For me, I just want a lot of information. I like a lot of info. So particularly, and this is just hard to support, to approve something that is 2,000. I mean, we're going to spend 3 study sessions on a piece of sidewalk 3 houses long, and we're gonna spend less than 2 hours on 2,000 pages of regulation. So I just like to know more about it, because I'm curious how it affects tiny homes, because obviously there's probably questions about occupancies and size of space that you can live in, things like that. So I'm looking forward to digging in more and learning more about these codes, and so I just want to add that. And I think that's it. Sorry for being so long-winded.
Councilor Abel.
No report.
Councilor Harrison.
Yes, thank you. Over the weekend, I went to Durango to see my parents, and while we were down there, saw the wildfire go from 4,000 acres to 22,000 acres in a 3-day span. I want to say thank you so very much to West Metro, who sent a team down there to help fight. You can't imagine what devastation that creates. Well, we saw it several years ago with the Hayman fire. Luckily, my parents are safe. They're 30 miles away from where this fire is, but there's a lot of really good people down there wondering if their house is going to be there. So please, all of us here in the city, remember, we're not quite as dry as they are down there, but we're kind of in a drought year here. Let's be really careful about what we've got going so we don't see that same devastation up here. Thank you.
Councilor Skilling.
Thank you to everyone who came out Saturday to our ward meeting. We had our usual big crowds. I think we had, Barb, 1,100 people there this week? It was something like that. It was either 70 or 1,100, but I appreciate all the people that come out, and that segues into thank you to everyone tonight that came out to public comment. We had some good presentations tonight from some folks, and I thought it was very enlightening to hear a lot of those presentations. The REMCOR people, that's really providing some valuable information. And look what happened. They came, spoke a public comment, and now we're going to be considering it. So I think that's shows that we're responsive to that, and I really appreciate people spending their time, Mr. Mueller with his packet and sticking around all night. So thank you to everybody that participated tonight. I thought it was a really, really informative meeting tonight all around. Thank you.
Councillor Gutwein?
No report.
Councillor Franks?
Thanks, Mayor Paul. I did want to comment on a comment that was made earlier. I think we continue to strive to do a better job at Ward 4, but our goal is to make sure that everybody gets a chance to speak, no matter what topic they want to speak on. So I just want to say that I think that we all each day make sure that we are inclusive, and I think that the Ward 4 meetings, while lively, and that's why it might feel like 1,100 people, we certainly encourage all of that public comment. I did want to say that the trash dialogue is timely, although it feels like stepping on a landmine in Ward 4, since we know that that is a tough issue in Ward 4. But we are now seeing people just email quietly that they're concerned. So I appreciate that we're out there gathering that information, but just know that in Ward 4 is a challenging discussion. And then the other thing I want to make sure that with the possibility of discussing, getting to the point where we may put something on the ballot for Tabor, it's going to be very, very important for me and many of my constituents who've reached out that the information is that informational. It doesn't lead anybody to any conclusions. It's really pointing to, here's the budget, here's the reserves, here, giving people good quality information, pointing them to the Tabor statute and pointing them to information, but even not subtly leading them to a conclusion. That is the way that it will, if we do get on the ballot. I just don't want it to appear like we put a thumb on the scale one direction or the other. Thank you.
Councillor Bita?
It's late. I've talked too much. No report.
Councillor Vincent?
We will still, though, have a Ward 2 meeting this Wednesday, 7:30 a.m. at 40 West.
Councillor Johnson?
I just want to say, Margie, I absolutely appreciate that you have to have some abbreviation of comments. It's just that for me, I want to be on record in both places that we can expand our role on charitable giving with the drop down on our website so people could give year round. That's all I was trying to say. Thank you.
So quite a few updates, so I'll take Councillor Bita. But I want to thank the Daughters of the American Revolution and the Boy Scouts for their Flag Day event that they had at the Boy Scouts facility on Saturday. That was a really cool opportunity, and met the City of Lakewood's first employee. She told me that when she was hired by Mayor Ritchie, she had to bring her own vacuum to work to do the cleaning. So quite a character, and that was really cool. We kicked off the art line. Fantastic, all kinds of great events, and people were thrilled. There was a cruiser ride before, and a lot of excitement. Had a hunger meeting to talk about senior and childhood hunger. We had over 60 different representatives come and really have some folks who stepped up and said they want to tackle this issue in the city of Lakewood. And it was a kind of a kooky time, but I want to thank the council members that took the time to come. I think we're going to make some great progress as we move forward and try to address these needs in the community. We had the police awards ceremony and got to honor our brave men and women of the police department, and our agent here tonight keeping us safe started with the national anthem, as he always does. So thank you, Agent Beers, for that. But some really incredible stories of heroics and recovering stolen cars, and a gentleman who just, I guess, finds DUIs every day, twice a day, 3 times a day, because he's incredible at his job. Next week we'll be off for CML. That's the Colorado Municipal League. Ballots are out. If you are a Republican, a Democrat, or anything else, you have the opportunity to vote in the primary. And as we approach the 4th of July, last year was a bad year, and we had a increase in reports of illegal fireworks. And I think I saw a sign in Thornton that said, respect your vets and people's pets. And I think we really need to take that into consideration, and potentially with the Big Boom Bash, that might keep folks from taking on their own firework displays at home. And then, last but not least, great update. And to Councilor LeBeer's point, certainly that can be daunting. And I think to council as a whole, and I want to thank Councilor Beta. I mean, this is a 2,000-page document, and it's easy to kind of get to one issue that you care about, but certainly it's that one issue really is a lot larger, right? So when you look at trying to address one thing for one person, what are those implications on everybody else that's subjected to that rule? And so, I think that as we continue to look at these, we have a great Board of Appeals. Sounds like their resumes really speak for themselves. So there's that trusting part and that ability to go and participate in those meetings. And then I would just echo one other thing, and council's done a great job about this, trying to really get answers or questions answered beforehand. Certainly, I think there's things that you want to bring to the dais and make sure that those are answered, but bringing those to staff beforehand has really helped with the flow of our meetings, and I continue to urge you to do that because that's really helpful. So with that, I think that is it. Ms. Greer, you certainly have something.
Thank you. On the agenda tonight, you had a motion for an executive session, and I just want to make sure that we put it in the minutes that executive session has been pulled and will be put on your June 25th meeting.
And you will see an ordinance coming for the Budget and Audit Committee, and that has to do with our update to our policies and procedures. But we thought it was going to be as easy as just rolling people off and replacing them. But unfortunately, we have to start over with a new ordinance, creating a new committee. And so our clerk is working on that, and you will see that coming out pretty soon.
On June 25th.
But that'll still keep us in line with somebody rolling off in August. So anything else for the good? Yes.
I would just like to thank our four mothers for breaking ground so that I don't have to bring a vacuum to work anymore. Thank you.
Councilor LeBear?
Yeah, just to your point about some of the issues and how we should be getting information in advance. I think part of it, I think that's why I've talked to many of our counselors about, having some sort of review committee, a committee that looks at some of these things, because sometimes it's hard to have a sense of, I have had a lot of discussions about this with different staff. I just think, if we had our professionals in there giving us some good advice and suggestions about, how we should move forward or things we should be looking at or what the appeals people are telling us, I think that helps. So I'd really, in the future, like to look at a committee that sort of reviews policy and takes recommendations. But
well, you're on the right council that we like committees.
Yeah, we do.
Keep that in mind. All right. We'll adjourn at 10.
Can we make Dana a member of that committee?
She's on it.
Smart Alec Tomcat.